My sister went on vacation with our parents instead of me. But during the trip, she did something really bad and got arrested. Now, our parents see her for who she really is. I'm 23 years old, and I have a younger sister named Lisa, who's 18. I really think she's super mean. I've been trying to tell my parents this for years, but they never believe me. Here's why our relationship is so rocky. My parents adore Lisa because my mom had a miscarriage before Lisa was born. Losing the baby was really hard on my mom, so when Lisa came along a few years later, she was like a miracle to them. They poured all their love and attention into her, making her the star of our family. Now, don't get me wrong, I used to love my sister when we were kids. But as we grew up, I noticed something. Lisa is really good at manipulating everyone around her. She knows how to make herself look good and make others look bad. It's like she's a pro at playing the victim. Once on my birthday, I got this really cool old pocket watch from our grandparents. It was a special gift because my grandma said it was a family treasure. I was super happy about it. But my sister, Lisa, was clearly jealous and kept asking if she could have it too. I said no because it was a present just for me on my special day. She tried to convince our parents to make me share, but since it was from our grandparents, it couldn't make me. That night, Lisa did something really mean. She knew I was terrified of spiders, so she put one in my pillowcase while I was sleeping. When I woke up and felt it crawling on me, I screamed and freaked out. My parents rushed in, worried about what was happening. Lisa acted like she didn't know what was going on, but later she told me she did it to scare me on purpose. She even grinned about it, which really freaked me out. I couldn't believe how mean she could be without feeling sorry at all. I remember one time when I had a crush on a boy named Mark from my class. I finally got the courage to invite him over to watch a movie with me at my house. I was so excited and even picked out a special dress to impress him. But when Mark got to our house, my sister Lisa ruined everything on purpose. She spilled juice all over my dress and started laughing at me. I felt so embarrassed and had to change clothes while trying to hide how upset I was. Then, to make things worse, Lisa started telling Mark embarrassing stories about me from when I was little. I felt really humiliated. Lisa wouldn't leave us alone the whole time we watched the movie. When Mark was leaving, Lisa told him that he could do better than me. Mark seemed uncomfortable and left quickly. I couldn't believe how mean and sneaky my sister could be. I kept telling my parents about Lisa's mean behavior, but they always excused it because they thought she was just young and didn't know any better. They didn't see her for who she really was. Whenever I complained, they brushed it off and saw me as the problem in the family. So I stopped talking about her bad behavior. Lisa kept being their favorite, while I, who was always honest, felt like I didn't belong in my own family. I focused on my studies and got into a good college. This let me leave home and have a better life. But whenever I came back home during breaks, Lisa made it clear she didn't want me there. She ignored me and wouldn't talk to me. During meals, she avoided sitting by me and would interrupt me when I talked to our parents. She always tried to make me feel uncomfortable. She even messed with my things, pretending she needed to borrow them, but would damage or lose them instead. When I complained, my parents didn't do anything and told us to get along. So I started avoiding coming home during breaks. I made excuses to spend time with my friends' families instead. My parents didn't mind, thinking I just wanted some independence and time away from home. When Lisa finished high school, her grades weren't good enough for college, so she went to a community college instead. That meant she didn't have to move out of our parents' house. These days, I work at a big company in San Francisco, and I really like my job. I keep in touch with my parents sometimes, but I hardly ever go back home. I don't talk to Lisa at all. Now on to what happened. My dad had a really bad heart attack recently, but thankfully he survived. He was rushed to the hospital. When my mom called to tell me, I immediately booked a flight home to be with them. The doctors gave my dad a bunch of medicines and told him he needed to exercise more. Since he got out of the hospital, he's been wanting us to spend more time together as a family. I understood, so I stayed at home for a few days. My job lets me work from anywhere, so it was okay. but I noticed Lisa was really annoyed that I was back. I tried to stay away from her because we're both older now, and I didn't want to fight after what happened to our dad. One morning at breakfast, my dad suggested we go on a family vacation since we hadn't done that in a while. At first, I wasn't sure, but I agreed because I knew it meant a lot to him. Lisa wasn't too excited about it, but she had to go with the plan. Dad took care of booking our flights and where we'd stay. I had already asked for time off from work and told my coworkers not to bother me so I could really enjoy the trip with our parents. But when we got to the airport, I found out my flight ticket was canceled. My dad was confused too because he said he had bought it. After checking, we found out that my ticket was the only one that got mysteriously canceled. I stood there, trying to understand what was happening. I looked at Lisa and she had the sneaky grin on her face, like she always does when she pulls off one of her tricks. I realized she must have canceled my ticket, probably from Dad's computer. I started yelling at her, but she just kept smiling. I told Mom and Dad it was Lisa's fault, that she didn't want me on the trip. But Mom didn't believe me. She said Lisa wouldn't do something like that and that I shouldn't be jealous of her. Dad said it might have been a mistake by the airline, not Lisa's fault. I was so frustrated that they couldn't see what Lisa was really like. There was nothing I could do. My ticket was canceled, and there were no more flights that day. I could have flown the next day, but I didn't want to go alone. This was supposed to be a family vacation. I really didn't want to share a room with Lisa on this trip. I had hoped she had grown up since we last traveled together, but as she canceled my flight, I worried she might have more mean plans for me. Dad was unsure at first, saying we could go back home and plan a new trip later, but then he talked about how he missed going on vacations. Mom agreed, saying I travel a lot for work anyway, so I wouldn't miss much if I didn't go. Their words hurt. It felt like they wanted me to say they should go without me, so I told them they could continue the vacation without me, and they agreed without hesitation. Even though I didn't want the money spent on the tickets and rooms to go to waste, I felt sad that they didn't care if I went with them or not. It seemed like they were fine going on the vacation without me. So there I was, alone at the airport while my parents and Lisa went on their trip. I decided to go back home to San Francisco. I didn't want to stay alone in our family house any longer. I tried to forget about what happened and focus on enjoying the rest of my time off from work. I spent my break catching up with old friends and reading lots of books, turning it into a solo vacation at home. Sometimes, my parents would video call me during their trip, and I could see they were having fun without me. It felt like they didn't really miss me on their vacation. Even though I wasn't too upset about missing out, I still felt left out. It reminded me of how my family always seemed to favor Lisa. I hoped that one day they would see her true colors, and it seems like that finally happened. A few days into their trip, I woke up to several missed calls from my mom, worried that something was wrong with my dad's health. When I called her back, she sounded really upset. She explained that they had noticed my dad's important heart medications were disappearing. It was serious because he needed them for his health. They were in a different country and worried if they could find the same medicine there as in the US. They were really concerned about the missing pills and searched their room but couldn't find them. My mom went to Lisa's room next door to borrow some sunscreen while Lisa was away. She was shocked to find all the missing medicines hidden in Lisa's bedside table. It was scary, so she called my dad. He came and found all his missing medication. I think that's when they realized the truth. Their favorite daughter, the one they called a miracle child, had been purposely putting my dad's health in danger. My mom sounded scared as she asked if they should talk to Lisa about it. I told her not to until they got back home. They needed time to think and gather proof before they confronted Lisa with the truth. Talking to her now wouldn't help because she's good at making excuses to avoid getting in trouble. But something must have happened because my parents must have talked to her about it. Lisa would be let go after 24 hours, and my parents couldn't do anything about it right away. They really wanted to go home after Lisa was released, so they tried to change their flight, but they found out their passports and wallets were missing. Lisa had either thrown away their passports or hid them. So now, they were stuck in another country with no passports or money. I think this was the first time my parents saw Lisa for who she really was. My mom, who always defended Lisa, was now asking me for help because they didn't have money or documents to fly home. She was upset and shocked to realize her daughter wasn't as good as she thought. I told them not to worry, and I would send them money with Western Union, but they had to find their passports first. I was sure Lisa didn't throw them away. Finally, my parents were realizing I was telling the truth about her all along. They were thankful I was helping them, even though they didn't take me on the trip. They said sorry for not believing me. Part of me wants to forgive them, but it's hard. I felt unloved because they always favored my sister, so I'm not ready to forgive them just because they regret leaving me out of the vacation. Update 1. Every day, my parents call me to tell me what's happening, and I'm getting more and more worried. After Lisa got out of jail, my parents told her to give back their passports or they'd call the police on her again. She had no choice but to tell them where she hid them. When they got home, my parents told Lisa to pack her things and leave. They finally realized how manipulative and harmful she was. They were worried she might hurt Dad again by stealing his medicine. Lisa got really mad and started yelling at my parents, saying she didn't want to share them with anyone, especially not me. She kept saying they should forget about me and only care about her. That's when my parents saw how jealous she was and how much she hated me being part of the family. They tried to calm her down, but she just kept yelling at them. She even threatened to make up lies about them to the police if they made her move out. This scared my parents because they're respected doctors in our community, and false accusations could ruin their reputation. Lisa's been making life hard for my parents ever since. When she found out they were talking to me more, she got really mad and broke dishes. She keeps hiding their car keys, making it hard for them to go to work. Just tonight, she had a tantrum during dinner and broke furniture. Then she blasted loud music in her room, so my parents couldn't sleep. The situation keeps getting worse, and it's really stressing my parents out. I'm worried about what might happen next. I can't go home right now because it might make things worse. I'm trying to convince my parents to talk to a lawyer so we can find a way to solve this problem for good. Going to court seems like the best way to protect my parents and make our family peaceful again. Update 2. Lisa got arrested, just like many of you thought might happen. She was causing more and more trouble, and one night she even threatened our parents with a knife during a big fight. It scared them, so they had to call the police. The officer arrested her for assault. With Lisa in jail, our parents knew they had to do something more permanent. They talked to a lawyer who helped them figure out how to make her leave their home for good. They gave her a formal notice saying she had to move out. They didn't want to press charges against her. They just wanted her to go. They bailed her out of jail and gave her the notice. It explained why she had to leave and when. They made sure to follow all the rules so Lisa couldn't argue. Then they went to court with their lawyer to start the process of making her leave. It was really hard for my parents because they were taking their own daughter to court. They felt sad and guilty, but they felt like they had no other choice. Finally, the court said Lisa had to leave the house. If she didn't go on her own, they could make her leave. Lisa will be out by next week. My parents are relieved they're taking a step to get their home in peace back. It's been tough, but they're hopeful things will get better once Lisa moves out. I've been talking to them through all this, and I'm planning to bring them to San Francisco for a few weeks. It'll give them a break from all the stress Lisa caused. Plus, it'll be a chance for us to spend time together, and I want to support them as much as I can. Update 3. I've read through all your comments, and many of you suggested we should check if Lisa has any mental health problems. But since she's an adult, we can't make her go for a checkup if she doesn't want to. Because of her sudden angry outbursts, we don't want to make things worse by pushing her. As I mentioned before, my parents came to visit me in San Francisco to take a break from everything that happened. Yesterday evening, we sat down to talk at my place. They were really sorry for not seeing Lisa's true self all these years and asked for my forgiveness. My dad felt bad for not listening to me earlier. They never thought Lisa would turn out like this and didn't see her real character behind her nice behavior. My mom also said sorry for not taking my concerns seriously about Lisa. She was upset to realize how they favored Lisa over me. I told them I appreciated them admitting their mistakes. I shared some tough memories of how Lisa made me feel all those years. My parents were shocked to hear what I went through alone. They admitted they were wrong and said sorry for making me feel left out. They said they always saw Lisa as special because they didn't expect to have her and thought of her as a miracle baby. They really meant it when they asked for my forgiveness. It was hard for me, but it was a start to fixing our family. We're finally talking about the problems we had for years. I told them I need time to trust them again, and we agreed to work on things together. For now, I'm going to enjoy the time I have with my family while they're here with me. Update 4. We've been spending a lot of time together in San Francisco, exploring the city and enjoying meals. It's been nice to reconnect after all the problems with Lisa. My parents didn't just come here to get away from her, but also to rebuild our family. We all want a fresh start. Right now, Lisa is staying with a friend. We can't just leave her alone.
My family and I are super close. We love spending time together, especially going on vacations. We try to go on trips together 2 or 3 times a year. Even if someone can't come with us, we always bring back a souvenir for them to feel like they were there with us. I'm Jenny, I'm 27, and I live with my family. My dad's often busy with work, so he's away a lot. My sister's married and moved out, so it's usually just me, my mom, and my grandfather at home. Lately, my sister hasn't been herself. Even when she visits, she seems sad. Are you okay, sis? You don't seem yourself lately. Yeah, I'm fine, really. I've noticed you're not smiling much. Is everything okay with your in-laws? Yeah, everything's fine. Stop asking weird questions. My sister got really defensive and upset. She went to her in-laws' house that day, but she didn't seem happy about it. After a few days, she came back looking really scared. What's wrong, sis? You look really scared. I'm not scared, but you're shaking. What happened? Oh, it's nothing. I'm just a bit cold. I was worried seeing my sister like this. Soon after, someone knocked on our door. It was Sean, my sister's husband. Hey, there you are. We were worried about you. Oh, Sean. Sorry for the trouble. Rachel was feeling homesick. Let's go home, okay? Yeah, okay. And she left with Sean, but she seemed really desperate. Mom, do you think something's wrong with sis? You noticed it too. She seemed really scared when she saw Sean. I got worried. Do you think she's being treated badly at her in-laws' place? With that worry in mind, I decided to visit her in-laws' house one day. Layla, my sister's mother-in-law, greeted me at the door. Oh, Jenny, it's been a while. What brings you here? Well, my sister's been acting strange, so I wanted to make sure everything's okay here. Everything's fine, really. Nothing out of the ordinary. If you say so. As we were talking by the entrance, we heard a loud noise coming from the living room. Oh no, what's going on? What's that noise? I'm not sure. Look, I'm really busy today. You should probably go back. Wait, why won't you let me in? You're already in the doorway, aren't you? That's not what I meant. Layla wouldn't let me inside the house. I was turned away and couldn't check on my sister. But a few days later, something terrible happened. My sister came home crying. Oh, sis, what's happened? Are you all right? What's wrong? She just cried and couldn't tell me. But when I looked closer, I saw bruises on her body. It seemed like Layla and Sean had hurt her. This is terrible. How could they do this? I held my sister tight as we cried together, but she seemed to have something even more worrying on her mind. The baby. Our baby. My sister already has a baby, but the little one is just a tiny infant who can't do much on their own. She came home, but there was no sign of the baby with her. Sis, where's the baby? What happened? Through her tears, she told me, they hurt our baby. What do you mean? What did they do? I've been putting up with it for so long. Sean's been abusive, my mother-in-law's been harassing me. But when I tried to stand up for myself, they threatened the baby. That's awful. She was trying to protect the baby. I tried to endure as much as I could, but my sister's voice trembled and she couldn't continue. Just then, Grandpa walked in. What's going on? What happened? Through tears, my sister explained everything to Grandpa. Was all Grandpa said, but then he quickly made a phone call. Who are you calling? I asked, but Grandpa didn't answer. He just said, we're going to their house. So with Mom, my sister, and me in tow, Grandpa drove us to the in-laws' house. After about a 10-minute drive, we arrived. What's happening? What a surprise to see the whole family here. Layla greeted us, acting like she didn't know anything. I've heard that you hurt my granddaughter and even my great-grandchild. Grandpa said calmly, but Layla just laughed. So what? It's not a big deal. And besides, it's all her fault. She pointed at my sister. I wondered what she could possibly be blaming my sister for. She told Scene to cut back on eating sausages because they're high in purine, and he was eating them almost every day. What's the problem with him eating what he wants? My sister was just worried about her husband's health. And you hurt my granddaughter over something like that. You're making a big deal out of nothing. It's ridiculous for you to bring your whole family here over this. Are you all fools? Layla laughed without any shame. Grandpa stayed quiet, but the furrowed lines on his forehead showed he was angry. Then my sister's husband, Scene, showed up. Hey Rachel, you're back. Did you go to your parents' place again? I was worried about you, he said, not looking worried at all. So why is the whole family here? We're here to confront you. Huh? Confront Mom? What's this old man talking about? I don't know, maybe he's losing his mind. Layla and Scene laughed, and even Grandpa started to laugh. What the heck are you all laughing at? I was just thinking about what's going to happen to you too. It should be any minute now. What do you mean arrive? As soon as Grandpa finished talking, cars started pulling up one after another and parking in front of my in-laws' house. What's going on? People started getting out of the cars, one by one, surrounding the house. There were about 30 people, and I recognized most of them. They were all my relatives. What in the world? Who are all these people? Why are there so many? They're my family. They all came because they heard my granddaughter was mistreated. What? They're crowding our house like this. It's annoying. Well then, let's go inside your house. With that, Grandpa led our relatives inside. Hey, don't just barge in like that. We followed Grandpa inside, and in the living room, my sister's baby was crying. Oh no, his face is all swollen. My sister hurriedly picked up the baby. Could it be they've been hurting the baby since my sister left? That's a serious problem. Did you really hurt such a small child? That's not it. It was unavoidable. We didn't want to do this. Layla claimed that the baby wouldn't stop crying, so they had to hit him. You don't hit a child just because they're crying. Layla and Scene are wrong. I can't forgive this. How dare you do this to my family? Some of our relatives are police officers, so we can press assault charges, Grandpa said angrily. But wait, isn't this a civil matter if it's between family members? Not necessarily, especially if there's evidence of assault. Grandpa confirmed with the relatives, and they agreed. After what they did to my sister and the baby, I won't be satisfied until they're taken away by the police. I insisted, but Layla and Scene kept making weak excuses. We don't need to make a big deal out of this. We just need to make sure it doesn't happen again. You're overreacting. Layla's voice shook, indicating she understood how serious this was. Hey Rachel, say something. We didn't do anything wrong, right? It was just a little rough handling, Scene yelled at my sister. My sister stayed silent, looking down. Come on, Rachel, say something. We're married, aren't we? Stand up for me, Scene demanded. Grandpa immediately stepped in front of my sister, shouting at Scene, How dare you speak to my granddaughter like that? Just because Rachel and I are married doesn't mean you can treat her however you want. It's not right. That's enough. According to you, no matter how much you hurt Rachel, we shouldn't interfere because we're not blood relatives. But as family, how can we stand by and watch? Grandpa's anger was intense, and Scene was so frightened that he started to cry. Wait a minute. You're the ones who came into our house uninvited. Isn't that trespassing? If I called the police, wouldn't you be the ones in trouble? We're ready to face the consequences for that, but you need to realize you're doing something worse. Trespassing. You should deal with that first. What do you mean? Tears started falling from Layla's eyes. Suddenly, Layla charged into the crowd of relatives. Hey, what do you think you're doing? As Grandpa tried to stop her, Layla had already grabbed my sister. Why did you bring all these people here? You're causing trouble. Leave now. Layla shook my sister by the shoulders. Fix this. Fix it right now. Stop it. Let her go. Grandpa forcefully pulled Layla away. Wow, throwing around a fragile woman like that. How cruel. Could this be considered assault? Layla tried to provoke him, but Grandpa wasn't swayed. Don't think that'll work. The problem is you attacking Rachel just now. But it's not my fault. We were living peacefully, and then this happens because of her. Maybe you were living in peace, but Rachel wasn't. It seems you've been quite cruel to her, even to your own great-grandchild. How can you be so shameless? I'm not being shameless, I'm just stating the facts. Rachel, say something. You've been silent this whole time. It's your fault all of this is happening. Layla continued to yell at my sister. Then, my sister, who had been silent with her head down, finally spoke up. Mother-in-law, I don't want to live in this house anymore. What are you talking about? You and Scene have always treated me terribly. I never imagined my marriage would turn out like this. I want a divorce. A divorce? Rachel, my sister, must have been holding back for a long time to suddenly say this. She sacrificed herself to protect her child. With the support of Grandpa and Mom, she seemed to find her courage. With a determined look, she declared her intention to divorce Scene. Don't joke around. I'll never agree to a divorce. You're going to be my servant forever. No way, I'm not your tool. I won't let you control me. You're definitely my granddaughter. When you decide to act, you really act. Grandpa was impressed by my sister's strong stance. This isn't the time for this conversation. I won't allow a divorce with Scene. I need a servant too. If you're talking about divorcing, you'll have to compensate Scene. Why would there be any need for compensation? Of course you've been a pain in the neck for Scene all this time. You owe us a few $1,000,000 in damages. Hold on, that's going too far. Grandpa quickly intervened. It's actually you who have been causing trouble, isn't it? You've treated Rachel and my great-granddaughter terribly. You should be the ones paying damages for the divorce. What? There's no way we're paying that. Besides, we don't have that kind of money. I won't accept any excuses. You'll pay, even if it's in installments. We have lawyers in the family, so don't think you can just get away with it. What? You even have lawyers? Mom, what should we do in this situation? Should we apologize? What are you talking about? We don't even know if an apology will be accepted. But if a company finds out about our divorce, it will be awkward at work. Work. Grandpa seemed to recall something. Come to think of it, I remember hearing about Rachel's husband's company somewhere. Ah, I remember now. You work for the company run by my relatives. What? You have relatives there too? There are plenty of consequences awaiting you, but your trespassing isn't the worst of your crimes, is it? We need to address that first. Fired. Not only divorce, but fired. Don't joke around. I absolutely won't allow that. Do you think saying you don't want to will get you out of trouble? Think about what you've done. Mom, do something. I'm going to lose my job. This is outrageous. It's unfair, all of this piled up on us like this. Who started with the outrageous behavior? All I've been doing is protecting my dear granddaughter. Grandpa's eyes were stern as he looked at Layla and Scene. They were so scared they couldn't even respond. Let's end this conversation here, Rachel. You can relax now. Our relatives will take care of the rest. Thank you, Grandpa. As Grandpa began to leave the in-laws' home with my sister, Layla and Scene started to cry out in despair. Wait. We're the ones who were wrong. Please don't go through with the divorce. I'm begging you. Scene was shouting desperately, but my sister didn't look back. She got into Grandpa's car, and they drove away. You should give up. Everything that's happened is your own fault. Why? Why did this have to happen? It's all Mom's fault. What? I'm not the one at fault here. You are. What did you just say? Scene and Layla kept arguing until they were out of sight. We went home after that, leaving the legal matters to our family lawyer, the police, and our company's owner. In the end, my sister was able to divorce Scene and even got a settlement. Furthermore, Scene was fired from his job, and it seemed hard for him to find a new one. My sister was finally free, and she couldn't help but cry tears of joy. A while later, we noticed Scene loitering around our house. It seemed like he wanted to reconcile with my sister, but she had no intention of that happening. The moment Grandpa saw Scene, he was furious. He immediately called our family member, who was a police officer and had Scene arrested for stalking. After that, a restraining order was placed on Scene, and he no longer came around our house. Finally, peace had come to our home. My sister said she plans to raise her baby with the support of our family for a while. I too am helping take care of the baby and enjoying my life with my wonderful family. My husband yelled at me on the phone, saying he wants a divorce. I thought as I came back from my work trip. He's fed up with me, but I've had enough too. If I say sorry, maybe he'll change his mind. I understand, I said to him on the phone. But instead of going to my husband's parents' house where he was, I went somewhere else. My name is Sophie, and I'm 28 years old. I got married to David, who is 2 years older than me, 3 years ago. To be frank, David is the son of the future CEO of the company where I work. Originally, I worked somewhere else, but after marrying David, I changed jobs. Now, I'm working hard in the same company as him, aiming to become the CEO's wife someday. David wasn't sure about me working there, but when the current CEO, who is his dad, ordered it, there wasn't much to discuss. My job keeps me really busy, and I often have to go on long business trips. We've been wanting to have a baby, but with our hectic schedules, it's been hard to relax enough for that. Lately, things between David and me haven't been great. We're both really busy, and we end up arguing about small stuff a lot. Just the other day, David got mad at me as I was getting ready to leave for work. "Hey Sophie, why didn't you wake me up when I asked you to?" "I did wake you up a few times, David, but you yelled at me to leave you alone and said you'd wake up by yourself, so I went ahead and made breakfast." "What? I never said anything like that. Don't lie to me." "I'm not lying. I tried to wake you up at least 20 times, and your alarm was blaring the whole time. You can't imagine what's going to happen if I'm late today. I'll get chewed out by my dad again. Why do I have to be the one who gets yelled at when it's his fault for not waking up?" At first, I put up with my husband's unfair scolding, but eventually, I started standing up for myself. This led to a big fight recently where he said, "I want a divorce." Thankfully, our in-laws stepped in and stopped things from getting worse. Still, I was getting really tired of him bringing up divorce every time we argued. One day, while I was getting ready for a business trip, my husband came up to me looking upset. "Hey Sophie, you're leaving for another trip, huh?" My husband always calls my business trips like they're not important. It's not just a trip, it's a business trip. "Why do I have to keep explaining this to you?" I replied, feeling frustrated. "Must be nice always going on trips and neglecting the housework. You're probably just going sightseeing after pushing all the house chores on me, right?" "Listen, that's enough. This is for your company, you know. Why can't you just accept that it's a business trip?" I can't imagine how it's like to be a rookie like you going on a business trip. Being so useful is pretty much just like a trip. What the hell is wrong with you? Can't you tell the difference between a trip and a business trip? Well, it's the truth, isn't it? You say I'm dumping the house chores on you, but you've never done anything around the house when I'm away on a business trip. When I'm not around, my husband only ever orders takeout, leaves the laundry piled up, and doesn't even take out the garbage. Despite doing nothing, his attitude gives me so much stress. Even the divorce drama last time was all because of his personality. Even though we both work and spend the same amount of time on our jobs, all the housework is left to me. On top of that, he acts all superior and domineering, which I couldn't stand. Trying to discuss it with him is pointless as he never admits to any fault on his part. Instead, he always turns it around and blames me. As I continued getting ready for my business trip in silence, my husband started yelling at me again. For goodness sake, the wife of the future CEO shouldn't be taking business trips so lightly. If you're not assertive like me, the other employees will walk all over you. That's exactly why I'm working hard. I need to learn the job and meet with different clients. And yes, being the CEO's son helps. But we also have to acknowledge the efforts of all the employees who work hard to keep the company running smoothly. What are you talking about? The company's success is because of the hard work of all the employees, not just because you're the CEO's son. You should work as hard as everyone else. At those words, my husband got really angry and shouted, "What do you mean, work harder?" The other day, I overheard some employees talking. They said you always pass off overtime and difficult tasks to others and complain a lot. What? Who said that? I'll fire them immediately. That's not the point. Can't you see that you're the one in the wrong here? Can't you see that you're just riding on your father's reputation? My husband's eyes widened with anger, and he grabbed my bangs roughly. Don't get too ahead of yourself. Who do you think got you this job in the first place? Ouch, let go. You're only able to work at this prestigious company because you're married to me, got it? Refuse the business trip. I won't allow you to neglect our home for some work trip. I've explained it many times, it's for my job. I can't just refuse. Shut up. Stop arguing back. You married me, so you should just listen quietly to what I say. Suddenly, his grip on my hair loosened, and I stumbled back onto the floor. If this argument keeps going, it might end up in another threat of divorce. I managed to push my husband out of the room and focus on getting ready for my business trip. When I come back, I'll have to deal with a week's worth of chores piled up by my husband. I bet the laundry will still be there, and the trash will be overflowing. Just thinking about it made me feel exhausted even before the trip. The next day, as planned, I headed off on my business trip. I focused on my work and didn't let personal issues get in the way. When I got back home after a week, I couldn't believe what I saw. I'm back. The house was sparkling clean, just like the day I left for my business trip. It was a pleasant surprise. Thank goodness. Maybe David finally understood how I felt. Perhaps he had a change of heart and decided to help with the housework. Just as I started feeling relieved that my husband was being more supportive, I saw divorce papers on the table. What? What's this? There was a note next to them saying, I'm going back to my parents' place. We're getting a divorce. Panicked, I quickly called my husband, and he picked up right away. Huh? Did you even read the divorce papers? His casual tone angered me, and I snapped back. Wait, are you seriously talking about divorcing me? Of course. You'd be in trouble if I did, wouldn't you? Don't talk about divorce so casually. Then my husband, Tham smug, said, if you're going to take it that seriously, and started laying out conditions. If you start taking care of the house and listen to me, I might think about canceling the divorce. But of course, no more trips. What? Like it wasn't just a trip. Huh? Are you talking back? If you are, then I'm divorcing you. You're such a nag. A nag? He calls me a nag when he can't even do a single thing around the house himself. If he's up for it, so am I. Fine. If you don't want to get divorced, then come and apologize. Do you understand? Holding back my urge to argue, I replied calmly, okay, I understand. You should have listened to me from the beginning. Now come quickly. With that, he hung up. Instead of going to my in-laws' house where he was, I headed to City Hall. I submitted the divorce papers and they were accepted without any trouble. I was officially single again. 3 hours later, while I was packing up at home, my ex-husband came back with his mother, probably fed up with waiting for me. As soon as they saw me, they started hurling insults. Hey, how long are you going to keep me waiting? That's right, you're a failure as a wife, yet you're out having fun. You should be taking care of David. Taking care of? How old is David? He's older than me, isn't he? I fired back, feeling frustrated. As I retorted, their brows furrowed in anger. Shut up, stop being stubborn, and apologize quickly. We're really going through with the divorce. If anyone will be in trouble if we get divorced, it's you, Sophie. You could have been the wife of the next company president, and you're okay with acting this way? And you. If you divorce me, you won't be able to live in this luxurious lifestyle. Are you okay with that? Well, I never thought you were a good match for David in the first place, so I really don't care. At a loss for words, my ex-husband grinned devilishly. Fine, this is your last chance. If you don't apologize now, we're getting a divorce. I'll even kick you out of the company. Decide quickly. At that moment, anger surged through me like a fireball. I had to make him understand the reality of the situation. We're already divorced, you know. What? Just as you wished. I've already submitted the divorce papers and they've been accepted, so I'm no longer your wife. What? Her ex-husband and mother-in-law stood there in shock. After a moment of silence, he finally spoke up. What are you talking about? This must be a joke, right? You wouldn't? Why would I lie? If you don't believe me, you can check the records yourself. No way. Suddenly, the mother-in-law, who had been listening, started to shout. Wait, Sophie, what have you done? You've put divorce on David's record, our future CEO. It was your son who gave me the divorce papers first. All I did was submit them. Stop making excuses. Cancel the divorce right now. Do you understand? I'm sorry, but once the divorce papers have been accepted, they can't be canceled. And I have no intention of canceling anyway. What? The mother-in-law was speechless, and the ex-husband just hung his head in defeat. Ignoring them, I continued, I'm tired of being ridiculed every time I go on a business trip and having to juggle work and housework every day. As far as I'm concerned, you're nothing but a burden. So Sylvie, calm down. Calm down. I'm perfectly calm. What's the point of being married if it's just a title? All you care about is yourself, isn't it? I didn't mean it like that. Do you realize you're losing your status as the CEO's wife? Are you okay with that? I didn't join your company to become the CEO's wife. I don't know how much you've been spoiled, but I didn't marry you to take care of you. Are you really willing to give up this lifestyle? If you just wait a little longer, you could become the CEO's wife. I absolutely refuse to keep being your caretaker. I'm not your mother. Just go and live your life on your own. With an intensity like never before, my husband was completely teary-eyed. His mother-in-law took her turn, stuttering out her final provocation. What if you divorce David? You'll also lose your job. And what if I do? What? I've already informed your father that I'll be quitting the company. What? The mother-in-law and ex-husband's eyes widened in surprise. To confirm, my ex-husband started calling his father. After a few rings, his father answered, and he put the call on speaker. Dad, listen to this. Sophie decided to divorce me on her own. Yeah, I heard. She told me she's quitting the company too. She's so selfish. Can't you fire her immediately with your CEO powers? Well, I guess I should fire someone ASAP. You. Yeah, that's right. Wait, what? Instead of the stunned ex-husband, his mother-in-law turned to her husband. What do you mean by that? There's nothing to explain. David is a liability who doesn't contribute anything to the company. I'm disappointed in his work ethic. Wait, what? How can you suddenly say that about our son? Stay quiet, the father-in-law firmly told his wife. David, your performance at work is lacking. You misuse company resources, make inappropriate advances towards female colleagues, and complain about trivial things like the cafeteria. You're just not cutting it. Do you think I don't know that your subordinates consider you incompetent? No, that's not true. It can't be. I can't protect you any longer, even if you're my son. You understand this, right? Just because you're the boss's son doesn't mean you get special treatment. But that doesn't mean you have to fire me. The only thing I can commend you for is marrying a capable wife. Sophie will continue to work for the company, but you're fired, David. At his father's words, my ex-husband's eyes widened in shock. Unfazed by his reaction, the father-in-law continued, Unlike you, Sophie is diligent in her work and brings in a lot of contracts. She's highly respected by our clients. Many companies have chosen to work with us because of her. But she was only sent on business trips because she's new. Don't be ridiculous. We trusted Sophie, so we gave her more responsibilities. You made fun of her, calling it a vacation or something, didn't you? No, I didn't. Let me make it clear. There's no place for you here until you become independent. Never come back to this house, understood? No way. And so, my ex-husband was disowned by his father-in-law, lost his job, and couldn't even return to his parents' home. When his mother tried to defend him, his father blamed her for spoiling him and gave her a divorce notice too. They used up their savings to live in an apartment, but they struggled to find work, and their unemployment continued. I still received messages from my ex-husband. Sophie, I was wrong. I won't make fun of you anymore. I promised to take care of myself, so please come back. I can't take it anymore. Help me. He was so persistent that I finally blocked his number. I shouldn't have to deal with that mama's boy anymore. On the other hand, I'm still working hard under my father-in-law, who is now the CEO. I have my own team, and I'm enjoying fulfilling days. I'm grateful that my father-in-law is a supportive manager. From now on, I want to pursue my goals without being held back by meaningless family ties. My daughter came home crying after she was invited to a Christmas party at my husband's parents' house. When I asked her why she was upset, she handed me a gift-wrapped present without saying a word. Mom, look at this. Why did this happen to me? She asked. I was shocked when I opened the present. It wasn't something meant for a child. I quickly went to the police and asked them to find out who gave this present to my daughter. The police investigation revealed that Ed was the one who sent it, and it caused a lot of trouble with our family members. Ed faced serious consequences for his actions. I'm in my 40s and my husband is in his 30s. We both work at the same company. I started working there when I was in my mid-30s after leaving my previous job because my boss insulted me at a party. He called me an old maid because I wasn't married by the time I turned 30. But at my current job, people are judged by their skills, not their age or gender. My husband, who is now my boss, helped me settle in when I first joined the company. We got married quickly, and now we have a daughter in 3rd grade. She's a quiet girl who loves to read and is always kind to others. My husband's sister is quite troublesome, and we don't get along well. Thankfully, I have a good relationship with my in-laws, which makes things a bit easier. My sister-in-law, who really loves her brother, doesn't seem to like that I'm older than him and married to him. She made fun of our quick wedding, calling me names like old hag and suggesting I was too eager for marriage. Despite her comments, she used to visit us often when we first got married. Being older when I had a baby made it harder to get my body back in shape. She'd make rude remarks about my body, saying things like my belly was wrinkled and saggy from childbirth. She even joked that it would droop to the floor. She said I'd probably go gray from the stress of having a baby. Every time she left, she'd make mean comments about me getting dumped by her brother as I aged. I try to brush off her hurtful words, but it's hard not to feel bad about being older than my husband. I distract myself to avoid thinking about it too much, but her laughter still echoes in my mind sometimes. Shortly before I was due to give birth, my sister-in-law's pregnancy was revealed, and she also had a quick wedding. It seemed like she didn't care about anyone else's feelings. After that, she stopped visiting us, and we didn't see each other much because she moved to another city to live with my in-laws after getting married. I was relieved not to have to deal with her sarcastic comments anymore, and I could focus on getting ready for my baby's arrival. When I finally gave birth to a healthy baby girl, it was a bit tough, and it took some time. But my husband was by my side the whole time, holding my hand and cheering me on. When we heard our daughter cry for the first time in the delivery room, my husband thanked me and said, "You did great." We both cried tears of joy together. 7 months after our daughter was born, my sister-in-law had a baby boy. Then she started coming to our house, even though it was a long drive for her. She'd make mean comments to me, comparing our children. She'd say things like, "It's obvious that a kid born to an older mom would have a wrinkled face. My kid's skin is so smooth, isn't it?" The age of the mother at birth really affects the child. I didn't know how to respond to her hurtful words. I was too busy dealing with the challenges of being a new parent to pay much attention to her. The problem was, she never brought any baby supplies with her when she visited. She'd come without spare diapers or formula, and then take a bunch home, saying she didn't want to run out. She'd even take unopened formula with her, like it was normal. I couldn't understand why she would insult me and then take things from our house. But then she stopped coming. My husband said that her husband's job required them to move to a different state. We enjoyed some peaceful times until our daughter started elementary school and found out her cousin, my sister-in-law's son, was also enrolled there. We moved back here because of my husband's job transfer. That's when I knew my peace was over. Even though my daughter and her cousin had different parents, they got along really well. My daughter, who was older and very sincere and kind, looked after her cousin. He, on the other hand, was very popular and had lots of friends. When they both reached the 3rd grade, they ended up in the same class. One day, my daughter won an award for a reading reflection she wrote for a summer project. It was so good that it even got published in the newspaper. The whole family and relatives were talking about it. During a break between school terms, we were visiting my in-laws. This time, maybe because they heard about my daughter's award, some relatives were there who usually didn't get together. But my sister-in-law wasn't happy that our family was getting so much attention. She complained, saying, "It's not fair. That book was supposed to be for my son, but your daughter took it." The truth was, they had just swapped books. They couldn't decide which book they wanted to read, so they agreed to swap after finishing. After they both finished reading both books, they talked about it and decided together which book report to write. My nephew liked the book my daughter read first, so she let him have it. When I explained the situation to my sister-in-law, she accused me of writing the award-winning reflection for my daughter. I used to write novels as a hobby in college, something she must have heard from my husband. Unbeknownst to me, she started spreading rumors among the parents at school, saying I had a connection with one of the judges and asked for a favor for my daughter's writing competition. My daughter heard these rumors and became really upset. She even stopped reading her favorite books, feeling downcast. Seeing my daughter so upset, not just because of me, but also because she became the target of mean comments, I couldn't take it anymore. I wanted to talk to my in-laws about everything that had happened, but I first confessed everything to my husband. It was the first time I told him about all the things his sister had done to me since we got married. She even took clothes I bought for my daughter when she was a baby, saying babies couldn't tell the difference between boys' and girls' clothes. She also insulted me and called me fat when I was pregnant, saying I looked like a sumo wrestler and should try a sumo stomp. My husband was furious, rightfully so, and he said it's not something to say to a pregnant woman. He called his sister's actions theft. He decided we should share everything with his parents, and he would be the one to tell them. So my husband and his parents went to my sister-in-law's house together. She was surprised to see them, but happy to see her beloved older brother. However, she ended up getting a harsh lecture from him and started to resent me even more. "You snitched to my favorite brother, you old hag. Acting like a tragic heroine must feel good, right? It's the worst for me, though. Take responsibility, you old ma," she said. At first, I thought she might be calling to apologize, but it turned out she just wanted to vent her anger at me. So I stopped answering her calls and let them go to voicemail. After about 2 weeks, the calls stopped, and I thought she had lost interest since I wasn't responding. But later, I found out that wasn't the case. In December, my in-laws organized a children's Christmas party for the first time. I was curious why they decided to do it this year. My daughter was thrilled to receive an invitation because she had fond memories of Christmas parties from her kindergarten days and was hoping her elementary school would have one too. However, her school didn't celebrate Christmas due to their policy on religious events. Why argue about religious reasons when Christmas has its own special meaning? I wondered. But apparently, some parents had strong opinions about it. I told my daughter we could have our own celebration at home since we did that last year. She was excited about the party and enjoyed picking out a gift for the gift exchange. The invitation for the party asked us to bring a gift worth around $20, so my daughter and I spent some time shopping at a nearby mall to find the perfect present. She chose one of her favorite picture books to share her thoughts with whoever received it. On the day of the Christmas party, she carefully held the present she picked and happily headed to my in-laws. Their house is just a 10-minute bus ride away from the bus stop, which is only a minute's walk from our house. I let my mother-in-law know that my daughter was coming, and she offered to pick her up. 10 minutes later, my mother-in-law called to say that my daughter had arrived safely, and I finally felt at ease. But 30 minutes later, everything changed. I had expected my daughter to be enjoying the Christmas party by now, but suddenly I heard the front door open. It was a weekday and my husband was at work. I was working from home because my daughter was on winter break. The unexpected sound of the door opening alarmed me, so I rushed to the entrance only to find my daughter sitting on the floor crying. I asked her what happened, and she handed me a gift-wrapped bag. She said I would understand once I looked inside, so I opened it. Inside was a torn-up newspaper with my daughter's reading reflection printed on it, along with a message card. The card, written in red ink, said, "If you get too cocky, you and your family will end up like this stuffed animal." There were also patterns that looked like blood splatters. Digging further inside, I found a stuffed animal that had been torn to pieces and covered in red ink. It was too cruel to be a joke. There was no way my daughter would coincidentally receive such a gift. During the gift exchange, my daughter explained that my sister-in-law had prepared this special present for her. Even though we agreed as a family that adults shouldn't personally prepare gifts for the child-focused Christmas party, my sister-in-law was at my in-laws' house. I didn't accompany my daughter because of this agreement. However, my sister-in-law's presence caught me off guard. My mother-in-law would have informed me if she had known my sister-in-law was there, but she didn't notice her. "Didn't you tell Grandma?" my daughter asked. My mother-in-law had always encouraged us to let her know if her daughter did or said anything to us. I had also communicated this to my daughter. When I tried to tell my daughter what happened, my aunt interrupted and said she hadn't called for me. She explained that only children with a connection to missionary schools were allowed. My daughter asked, "What's a missionary school?" and I was speechless. Just this spring, one of our relatives had passed the entrance exam for a missionary school, which had become a big topic of conversation. My sister-in-law's son also attended a missionary kindergarten. My sister-in-law must have thought this topic would be a way to scold my daughter. I told my daughter to stay inside with the gift she received while I rushed to the police station alone. I argued that it was a serious threat, but the police suggested resolving the matter within the family. However, I insisted that threats can be valid even among family members or siblings. Not only were there threatening words, but also a threatening letter and a mutilated stuffed animal, which I argued was malicious. Fortunately, a female police officer happened to pass by and empathized with how scared my daughter and I must have been. After I provided my sister-in-law's address, she promised to go and warn her right away. My wishes were fulfilled in the end, but I shudder to think what might have happened if that officer hadn't passed by. It was disheartening to realize that some members of the police force still wouldn't take action unless there was an actual incident or accident. I worried about how I could protect my daughter in case of an emergency. That evening, when my husband returned from work, I told him everything that happened. He was furious with his sister for ruining our daughter's fun out of spite. He immediately called his parents to express his anger, since the Christmas party was happening at their house and they supposedly didn't know anything about it. They claimed they had no idea my sister-in-law was there. They had left the back door unlocked, so she might have entered that way. My mother-in-law apologized for not paying attention to who was coming and going as she was busy picking up other grandchildren nearby. My father-in-law had been away at work during the day. The Christmas party was mainly organized by the older nephews and nieces, and my mother-in-law had mostly left it to them. Later, the police officer firmly warned my sister-in-law. From what I heard, she was told that any further reports could lead to more than just a warning, so things should be fine for the most part. However, my in-laws were upset by my sister-in-law's actions, which had escalated to involve the police. It could potentially lead to criminal behavior. As a result, they called a meeting with both our family and my sister-in-law's family with the parents present for discussion. When we arrived at my in-law's house for dessert, my sister-in-law and her husband hadn't shown up yet. They finally appeared right at the last minute, with my sister-in-law clearly sulking. It was obvious she wasn't remorseful and resented me for involving the police. Her husband, sitting next to her, seemed clueless about why they were summoned. He'd appeared to have been called without being informed of the reason. During the discussion, he was shocked to hear for the first time about all the things his wife had done to our family, unaware that things had gotten to this point. He profusely apologized to us, feeling sorry. Seeing his reaction, my in-laws asked my sister-in-law if she had anything to say, but she just responded with, "Not really." She didn't seem to understand why she needed to apologize, acting as if she hadn't done anything wrong. I didn't do anything bad. The police came but didn't arrest me, right? So that means I didn't do anything wrong. Everyone else was dumbfounded by her logic. It was like they couldn't close their mouths from shock. Lecturing her seemed like a waste of time. Then, unexpectedly, my sister-in-law's husband announced he was divorcing her. We were all puzzled because it seemed like they had a good marriage. Seeing our surprised looks, he confessed that he had reached his limit with her behavior since they got married. He hadn't complained about her not doing housework during pregnancy, and he hadn't scolded her for neglecting childcare and going out to have fun, thinking it was stress from being a new parent. But her carelessness with housework once led to a small fire that forced them to move. She, being vain, had insisted on their son attending a prestigious kindergarten when she heard other neighborhood kids were applying. But he didn't get in due to a lack of preparation. Embarrassed, she forced another move. While his job did involve transfers, they weren't as frequent as their moves suggested. He revealed that the frequent moves were not just because of his job transfers, but also to maintain my sister-in-law's image. After failing the kindergarten entrance exam, she tried to get him into an international kindergarten. And when that didn't work out, they barely managed to get him into a missionary kindergarten. Choosing a public elementary school was only because their son wanted it, and my sister-in-law reluctantly agreed. After her husband supported their son's wishes, he feared their son would be sacrificed for her vanity and had been considering divorce already. With her harassment coming to light, he felt he had no other choice but to announce it now. My sister-in-law, somewhat aware of her actions, didn't dispute what he said but seemed taken aback by the divorce. "Wait, what do you mean divorce? You never showed any signs of this," she said, suddenly starting to apologize to us, thinking it would help. "It was just a joke, right? Just a little prank. I never thought you'd take it seriously," she insisted. "A joke? A prank? Those are things done among people who trust each other. My daughter knows all about what you've done to me. How could she take it as a joke?" Moreover, that hostile message was too much for a third grader. Even adults would be scared to go outside if someone threatened them, I told her. Her husband criticized her, asking if she could say the same thing to her own child, and said her actions were unimaginable for a parent. Just because someone is a parent doesn't mean they have parental feelings. There are people who can't be real parents, and she is probably one of them, my husband said sternly, seeing her crying. Crying wouldn't fix anything at her age, and she needed to stop thinking tears would get her out of trouble, he added. She cried even more, insisting she did nothing wrong and wasn't to blame. Why am I the only one being blamed? Is everyone ganging up on me? She cried. It's all because my brother married an older woman. My brother's wife should be smart, beautiful, and so on. Our marriage and her harassment are totally separate issues, right? We already thought she was a bit off, but even my husband was astonished at her stupidity, I explained. No one tried to comfort the inconsolable sister-in-law. The discussion couldn't continue, so we decided to adjourn for the day. Her husband had to drag her to the car and take her home. Their divorce eventually happened, but it was a messy affair due to her stubborn refusal to agree. Her son's accidental revelation might have been a factor in her agreeing to the divorce. He, without any malicious intent, simply shared what he saw with his friends. However, the parents who heard the rumor did not remain silent. After winter break at school, my nephew talked about having a Christmas party with his older cousins. It seems that at school, they used a class to have a presentation about their winter break memories. Among stories about what they did on New Year's Day and video game consoles they received as Christmas gifts, we all exchanged presents. Then I saw my mom giving my cousin a special present just for her, and I thought it was unfair. When the teacher asked what kind of present it was, my nephew described exactly what he saw. I saw it. The cute stuffed animal was all torn up with lots of red stuff on it, like blood, he said. The story became a topic of discussion among the school teachers and escalated into a major issue after the children who heard it went home and told their parents. My daughter, still heartbroken, hasn't been able to go back to school since the Christmas party. Everyone knew that my daughter and her cousin were related, so they speculated that her absence was related to the incident, and they were right, but I wished it had gone unnoticed and left undisturbed. I had planned to wait until my daughter was ready to return to school on her own terms. Her cousin didn't share the story to be funny, but rather to find a way to stop his mom's terrible behavior. He too was hurt by her actions. Learning this, her husband realized he couldn't delay the divorce any longer and agreed to her demands in exchange for her consent to the divorce. By then, she had become infamous in the neighborhood as the woman who threatened children, and no one wanted anything to do with her. She was even pelted with garbage when walking outside. Feeling cornered, she agreed to the divorce, thinking returning to her parents' home would end her nightmare. Her husband had no intention of giving up custody, but she readily relinquished it. I'll remarry someone much better than you. Kids are a nuisance when remarrying, so I don't need him, she said in front of her son. But he stood up to her. I don't need a terrible mom like you. I have a cool dad, and that's enough. Never show your face to my cousin again, he said. She left with a final retort, you'll regret this later. However, it was my sister-in-law who ended up in tears when she triumphantly returned to her parents' house. They turned her away at the gate, banning her from ever showing her face there again. With nowhere to go, she resorted to spending nights with random men in exchange for meals and a place to stay. When she couldn't find a man, she borrowed money from dangerous sources and spent her nights out, accumulating massive debt. Her debts became so overwhelming that no amount of part-time work could cover them, and eventually, she disappeared. My husband and his parents decided not to file a missing persons report, reasoning she's not a child anymore. They agreed it's better this way, not willing to take care of her if she returns. Since then, my daughter has been able to go back to school on her own. Her former brother-in-law didn't move, so her cousin still attends the same school. He now says it's his turn to protect her, and they have become closer than ever. This has led to a deeper friendship between us and my former brother-in-law, as our children have brought us together. My in-laws call both my daughter and their grandson their dear grandchildren, stepping in as his guardians when he can't do to work. With my sister-in-law gone, there's no more tension, and we have built a very trusting and reliable family relationship. Hi, I'm Lauren, and I work from home. My husband Daniel and I got married 3 years ago when we were both 33. We really wanted to have kids, so we went to a doctor to see if there were any problems that might make it hard for us to have a baby. Luckily, the doctor said everything was fine, which was a relief. But even after waiting for a while, we still weren't able to get pregnant. Just when we were starting to feel hopeless, Daniel suddenly said, "We need to have a baby to carry on the family line." I felt a bit confused by what he meant. Daniel is usually a good husband, but he tends to listen to his mom a lot. I'm not a big fan of his mom though. She always seems to like Daniel best, even though he has a younger sister. His sister didn't like this special treatment, so she moved out of the house early on. Daniel's job involves moving around a lot, but when we got married, he was working close to his parents' house. Before we tied the knot, he warned me that he might have to move for work. But I didn't mind. I believed that as long as we were together, I could adjust to living anywhere. However, when we found a place to live near his parents' house, my mother-in-law started showing up at our place a lot, especially on Daniel's days off and even when I was working from home. She always had something to criticize about how I did things like laundry or cleaning, which really bothered me. What's more, every time we saw each other, she'd pester us about having a grandchild, saying it had to be a boy, not a girl. Her constant presence made me feel stressed out. I tried telling Daniel about the problems with his mom, but he just keeps saying, "She's just trying to be friendly, Lauren." But it's not helpful when someone stresses you out instead of getting along with you. I used to admire Daniel's optimism, which I lack, and I thought we balanced each other well. But we can't seem to fix this issue. Finally, 6 months ago, Daniel got transferred for his job, so we moved away from his parents' place. Our new home is far from my parents' house too. Unlike the rural area around my parents' place, Daniel's new workplace is in a busier area, kind of like a small city in Nebraska, with good transportation and facilities. Plus, it's less than an hour's drive from my parents' house. Moving relieved a lot of my stress. I could focus on my work, and life felt better. Then recently, I found out I was pregnant. Daniel and I were overjoyed. I'm a bit worried because I'm older, but we've been wanting this pregnancy for so long. When we told his parents, my mother-in-law immediately asked if it was a boy. Even though we didn't know the gender yet, she insisted it had to be a boy, but the baby turned out to be a girl. When my mother-in-law found out, she called me when Daniel wasn't around and said, "You're really useless. What did you marry into this family for?" I don't know if it was because of hormones or just feeling emotionally overwhelmed, but I couldn't stop crying. When Daniel came home and saw me, he got angry. When I told him what happened, he yelled, "Are you saying my mom did something wrong?" That just made me cry even more. Despite all this, Daniel still takes care of me and helps with the housework, so he's a good husband as long as his mom isn't involved. I safely delivered the baby and went back home a month later. Daniel picked me up, and on our way home, to my surprise, my mother-in-law was there. I didn't expect her to come to see her granddaughter, but she did. I had a bad feeling, but Daniel was oblivious and happily said, "My mom came to help." While he was busy with our daughter, my mother-in-law pulled out a box of cake from the fridge. "This is to celebrate your childbirth. I'm sure you didn't get to enjoy any good food while you were out in the countryside for your postnatal recovery, did you?" I was annoyed by the way she said it but tried to let it slide. "This cake costs $500, she exclaimed, handing me the box. $500. I was taken aback. I had never heard of such an expensive cake before. Nodding, my mother-in-law urged me to open it. I was curious to see what a $500 cake would look like. Excited, I placed the box on the table and opened it, but I was slightly disturbed by the smug look on my mother-in-law's face. The cake that came out of the box was not what you would expect from a $500 cake. The whipped cream was dried out, and the fruits on top were clearly canned oranges. I wondered which bakery would sell such a poor quality cake for that much money. I usually love sweets and can enjoy any cake, regardless of its price, but this was the first time I felt such disappointment the moment I opened a cake box. However, the story with my mother-in-law's cake didn't end there. I couldn't believe my eyes as I looked up from the cake. There she was grinning. "So how's the $500 cake?" she asked. At that point, I lost my temper and threw the cake box and all into the trash. "Please leave," I shouted, surprised by my outburst. My husband rushed into the living room. Before I could say anything, my mother-in-law started crying. "Lauren is being so mean," she said, then pointed at the trash can. My husband looked at it and became furious. What the hell had he done? That was a cake my mom went through all the trouble to make. As I lost the opportunity to mention the supposed $500 cake, my mother-in-law chimed in. Yes, that's right. I made that cake for you, so it's worth $500. Ah, so that's what it was. Of course, there's no way a cake like that could cost $500. Not even $50. Honestly, I wouldn't even buy it for $5. Everything finally clicked into place. No bakery would make such a disrespectful cake. As I was trying to process it all, my husband yelled, Lauren, apologize to Mom. It seemed like he always took my mother-in-law's side, no matter what. I stood there in shock, but then I heard our daughter crying, so I rushed to her. There was some noise from the other side of the door, but right then, my priority was comforting my daughter. After I finally got her settled down and returned to the living room, I found a note saying they had gone out to eat and that I should think about what I'd done. I was stunned. I wondered if I could stay living here with my husband, but I didn't know if it would be right to go crying to my parents. But I had nowhere else to go. While I was pondering this, I glanced at the trash can where I'd thrown the cake. It was still there, untouched. On a whim, I decided to take a picture of it. When I called my parents and told them everything, my dad said he'd come pick me up right away. I felt sorry for my newborn daughter. We had to move again, but it was better for both of us than staying where we were. My husband, who was supposed to be out for a meal, didn't come home as quickly as expected. My father arrived first. As he started loading our stuff into his car, my husband and mother-in-law finally came home. They seemed surprised to see my father there and got angry when they saw him carrying my things. Where are you going? Running to your parents again, huh? You always flee to them whenever things go wrong. His words were harsher than usual. It seemed he'd been drinking. His face was red and he smelled of alcohol. Seeing him like that, I lost my temper. You went drinking after leaving us, your wife and your newborn daughter, at home. Right now, I don't want to be in the same space as you two. That's why I decided to rely on my parents. Then my mother-in-law, who also smelled of alcohol, chimed in. Good riddance, a daughter-in-law like you is scary. Her comments always grated on my nerves. Fine, as you wish. I'll take my daughter and go. So please enjoy your time alone with my husband Daniel. When I said this, my husband looked confused, but I ignored him and got into my father's car. It seemed like my father was trying to keep his emotions in check and didn't intervene. The next day, my husband contacted me. Where are you? I woke up and was surprised to find you gone. All right, I had forgotten. Because he doesn't usually drink, but he tends to forget things when he does. I sighed. Don't you remember? You left your hungry wife and daughter at home to go out to eat with your mother, and then you came back drunk. After being treated and spoken to like that, I couldn't stay there anymore. While my husband sounded surprised and flustered, I could hear my mother-in-law in the background. My anger from yesterday returned. So your mother stayed over. I won't be going back to a home where such a rude person is staying. What do you mean? His voice lowered. She might be your mother, but she's a stranger to me. I'm exhausted from childbirth and don't have the energy to be considerate of others. Who do you think was the cause of our infertility? It was because your mother kept visiting and stressing me out. Otherwise, there's no way I would have gotten pregnant so soon after we moved and she stopped visiting. I was relieved not to see her mother's face. But when I came back home with our daughter, your mother was there, and I just can't stand this. Though I knew I was saying some hurtful things with all the resentment I had been holding back, I couldn't stop myself. And then my husband shouted over the phone, "You're the worst. Come back right now and apologize to my mom." When he said that, it felt like time had stopped for a moment. The next words that came out of my mouth were, "What?" As if to mock him, I continued, "The reason why I'm here with our child is because of your mother's request." When I said this coldly, my husband let out a confused sound. "What? What do you mean? Your mother didn't want her daughter. She's always been saying that, hasn't she? She wanted us to have a son." Well, I didn't know how serious she was, but I was sure when I saw that cake. Cake. Did you see the chocolate plate? Huh, the chocolate plate on the cake? Or did you not even look at the cake itself? I had hit the nail on the head. The trash can where I threw out yesterday's cake was still empty, so it was probably still the way it was yesterday. With that in mind, I instructed my husband to go look in the kitchen trash can. But there's nothing in here. Did she get rid of the evidence in the middle of the night? Then why don't you ask your mother what was written on the chocolate plate and where she threw it away? Then I could hear their exchange on the other end of the phone. She was denying knowledge of any chocolate plate, suggesting that I was being delusional. She stubbornly refused to reveal where she discarded it. So how will my husband respond? She's saying she doesn't know anything about any plate. Even my husband sounded a bit hesitant. A bit weak, right? Wouldn't it be awful if Daniel saw that plate? Even if it's a lot of trouble, you got rid of it before he saw it, right? To get rid of the evidence, I could hear my husband's voice darken in the background. Behind my confused husband, I heard my mother-in-law's voice. Why don't you hurry up and come home? Tell her to entertain me. She's a really useless daughter-in-law. At her words, my husband finally seemed to be attempting to rein in his mother. I'm going to hang up and send a text. Maybe you and your mother should read it together. Contact me again when you're ready to talk. After saying that, I ended the call. I sent all the photos of the cake and played them for my husband. Within 30 minutes, he called back and said he would be heading over here right away. I stopped him. My father-in-law should be getting there soon. Stay there. With that, I hung up. In reality, my own father had been so enraged by my husband's behavior yesterday that he had contacted my in-laws. He had reported everything to my father-in-law. Unaware of this, my father-in-law had apologized profusely and said that he would go to my husband and have a talk by evening. My husband and in-laws arrived at my parents' house. As soon as he arrived, my husband bowed deeply to me, apologizing. I don't know anything about what's been happening or what happened this time. I didn't know my mother said such things to Lauren. Looking at my seemingly repentant husband, I felt myself growing cold. Don't you think it's too late to say you didn't know? Didn't we have this conversation when we were living in our previous home? Despite that, you sided with your mother, saying she just wanted to get close to me and did nothing to change her attitude towards me and my words. My husband started to turn pale. Plus, you always said that your mom absolutely wanted us to have a son. What's that about? Are you always going to do whatever your mother says? Since you chose your mom over your wife, I guess you don't need me, do you? My husband turned pale and clung to me. That's not it. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to. Then what did you mean? I retorted. My husband was at a loss for words and fell silent, looking down. Just as I thought, Daniel. You chose your mom over your own wife and daughter, a mother obsessed with her eldest son and a mama's boy. I should have realized sooner. It's no wonder your sister left home early. With this, my husband retorted, I'm not some mama's boy. I care about you too. Then could you really sever all ties with your mother? I fired back. At that, he fell silent. When I sighed, my mother-in-law, who was brought here by my father-in-law, yelled out, How can you say such a thing? Daniel and I are mother and son. We can never sever our ties. His father tried to calm her down, but she just wouldn't stop. To be frank, I never really liked you. I wanted a younger wife for Daniel, really. In that case, I'll be straightforward with you right now. I have divorce papers ready. If we divorce, then you and I can be strangers. Hearing this, my husband's face turned pale as he looked at me. I don't want to maintain a relationship with someone who would write these nasty things on my cake plate, I said coldly. Saying this, I pulled out my phone and showed everyone the picture of the plate that read, Take your daughter and leave. Upon seeing this, his father, perhaps not having been fully informed, angrily shouted at his wife, turning blue in the face. What you did to your own daughter, you did it against her daughter-in-law. I was shocked to hear this. Apparently, his mother had once served a birthday cake to her daughter with the words, I don't need a daughter, written on it, leading to their estrangement. Just how much she must hate women. Perhaps she thought she could get more attention by excluding the women close to her. Indeed, her son, Daniel, was acting just as she expected. When I handed my husband the divorce papers, he started making excuses. We just had a child. We shouldn't be getting a divorce. My mom just went a little too far this time. She was just jealous of you. Try to understand. Is that what you came here to say? I thought for sure you were going to tell me you were severing ties with your mother and coming back home. I'm never returning to that house. Then my father-in-law, who had been silent and pale-faced, spoke up. Daniel, sign the divorce papers. I'm done with this family. When I get home, I'm divorcing your mother too. What? His mother spun around at these unexpected words. I've thought about it a few times before, but I thought it was too late for a divorce and that I just needed to be patient. But now that I see you doing the same thing to another woman, I've reached my limit. Sign our divorce paper and leave our house. Begrudgingly, my husband signed the divorce papers under his father's direction. As a consolation, I received around $10,000 from his father. At first, I declined, but I accepted gratefully when he assured me it would be deducted from his wife's assets. My ex-in-laws really did get divorced, and his mother seemed to rely on Daniel. But he refused to take her in, blaming her for the circumstance. Indeed, the family fell out. His mother, who hadn't worked since they got married, lost all the money she received in the property division after investing it all in cryptocurrency, which someone had recommended to her as an easy way to make money. I received child support from Daniel every month, and now I'm raising our daughter with the help of my parents. I'm so happy to see our daughter growing up and doing great. Hi, I'm Jacob. I'm really nervous today because I'm about to do something very important. I'm going to Sarah's house to ask her to marry me. Sarah and I were classmates when we were younger, and we started dating again after meeting at a school reunion 6 months ago. We're both older now, in our 30s, and we've been talking about our future a lot. Sarah has been talking about getting married, and although it made me a bit nervous, I also thought it might be a good idea, so we decided to get married. I feel bad that I didn't propose to Sarah in a proper way. We decided to get married quickly without much planning. Just a few days ago, we finally decided that I would ask her formally at her house. I haven't met Sarah's parents since we started dating, but I remember seeing her dad once when we were in middle school, probably at a parent-teacher meeting or a school event. He seemed serious and focused on education, which impressed me. My own dad passed away when I was young, and he was more laid back. So seeing Sarah's dad being so involved stuck with me. He seemed like a serious person. I'm worried about what Sarah's dad will think when he learns we decided to get married so quickly and without a proper proposal. He might think our relationship of only 6 months is too short. The more I think about it, the more nervous I get. I had a hard time sleeping last night, and this morning I struggled to eat breakfast. My mom noticed and looked concerned. I told her I was going to introduce her to my girlfriend soon, but I didn't mention it's Sarah yet. I want to surprise her. My parents were also classmates in middle school, so I think she'll be happy to hear that my future wife is also a classmate. After my dad passed away, my family faced financial struggles, and I had to start working right after finishing middle school. My mom really helped me stay on track during that tough time. She's always positive, never speaks badly about others, and keeps a hopeful attitude, which has rubbed off on me. She doesn't ask much about my love life, probably because she knows I'm busy, but I want to reassure her. That's why I need today's meeting to go well. I'm feeling really nervous, like I might get a stomach ulcer. But seeing how anxious I am, my mom gave me a reassuring pat on the back and said, "You've got this, son." She's right. I can't afford to be weak now. I need to gather my courage. With that in mind, I made my way to Sarah's house. When I got there, Sarah greeted me at the door and welcomed me inside. "Come on in, my parents are waiting," Sarah said, which made me feel really nervous. When I stepped into the living room, Sarah's parents were sitting on the couch, smiling at me. "We're glad you're here. We've been waiting," they said warmly, and suddenly I felt a wave of relief wash over me. It wasn't as intimidating as I had feared. They seemed friendly and welcoming, and I started to think this meeting might turn out okay. After introducing myself, Sarah's mom brought out some tea. "Thank you," I said gratefully. "I didn't know you went to middle school with Sarah," I exclaimed, surprised. "Were you ever in the same class as her?" she inquired. I explained that we hadn't shared a class, but Sarah had approached me at the school reunion. "Oh, I understand. But I should remember you if you were a top student, even from a different class," she pondered, resting her hand on her cheek, looking puzzled. Before I could respond, Sarah interjected with a laugh. "Jacob wasn't exactly a star student, was he? Always pretty average, right?" I wish Sarah hadn't been so blunt, but it was too late. I glanced at Sarah's mom and saw her looking at me with an unreadable expression. Sarah's comment changed the mood in the room. What was once a pleasant atmosphere turned heavy and silent. After an awkward pause, Sarah's dad spoke up. "Which college did you attend?" "I never went to college. In fact, I didn't even finish high school. I had started working right after middle school." I was planning to be honest about my past when suddenly, a cup of tea flew towards me before I could finish my sentence. At the same time, there was a shout. "Don't lie to me. Sarah told me you were a CEO, but you're just a dropout who's been working since middle school. How can I trust someone like you to run a company?" You're just riding on the startup trend and you'll fail soon, mark my words. Sarah's dad glared at me, shocked. He grabbed my collar and demanded, "What's your real motive? Are you trying to take advantage of me because I'm an executive at a big company?" I tried desperately to explain, but he wouldn't listen. "I can't trust someone who didn't finish high school." "You don't belong here. Get out," he yelled, pushing me away and throwing a teacup at me. I couldn't even clear up the misunderstanding or calm him down. He kicked me and I fell to the ground. Sarah and her mom just watched, not intervening. Then everything went black. He flipped the dining table and I tried to dodge, but it hit my foot. The pain was intense and I couldn't help but groan. "Stop overreacting. It can't hurt that much," Sarah's dad scoffed. Even Sarah joined in, saying, "You're so weak for a man. This is pathetic." I knew I had to get out of there. Despite the pain in my foot, I managed to leave Sarah's house. When I got home, my mom, who had been eagerly waiting for me, rushed out to greet me. Seeing her, I felt so relieved that I passed out. "Jacob, thank goodness you're awake." My mom's worried face greeted me as I opened my eyes, tears welling up in her eyes. As I came to, memories of what happened at Sarah's house flooded back. I was supposed to make her happy, but instead, I ended up causing her worry and sadness. "I'm sorry, Mom. I don't think I can introduce you to my girlfriend after all," I confessed. "Don't worry about it, Jacob. I'm just glad you're awake," my mom reassured me. "I was really surprised when you collapsed in front of me. You slept for a full day due to the shock. According to the doctor, it seems like you broke a bone in your toe. You'll be discharged from a hospital soon, but it'll take about a month to heal. They also found bruises all over your body." Prompted by my mom's encouragement, I began to recount what had happened that day. As soon as I mentioned Sarah's last name, I noticed a change in my mom's expression. "Johnson, you don't mean..." Her face turned pale. It dawned on me that when I was in junior high, Sarah's dad had criticized my mom, saying that having a single parent's child around was a bad influence on his daughter. My dad wasn't around during my junior high years, and my mom, who was working hard every day, could only attend school events once in those 3 years. She was hurt deeply by what Sarah's dad said to her on that occasion. She never spoke about it or showed any signs of being affected by it. But now, seeing my mom's frustrated expression, saying, "I can't believe the person who said such a thing hurt my son," my anger surged. It wasn't just about him looking down on me for only finishing junior high, but he had also hurt my mom in the past. At that moment, I resolved to confront them, father and daughter. The next day, I made my way to Sarah's house again. I had let her know beforehand, but Sarah didn't seem to feel guilty about what happened. Instead, she blamed me for the lack of communication during the day I was unconscious. That's just how she was. It made me feel pathetic to think that the person I planned to marry could act like that. But at the same time, I realized it was a good thing to find out before getting married. When I arrived at Sarah's house, both her parents were waiting outside. "Daring to come back here? Don't you dare set foot in this house again." Sarah's dad was already being aggressive. He didn't even acknowledge that I was on crutches with a cast on my left foot. "I have no intention of coming back inside. I've decided to file a complaint, so I came to inform you today," I declared. My words seemed to catch them off guard, and they exchanged looks before bursting into laughter. "Wait, you're serious about filing a complaint? You weren't seriously hurt. It's ridiculous to sue your fiancé's dad," Sarah argued. I informed her that the engagement was off. I thought they might be surprised or upset when I mentioned the complaint and the breakup, but they didn't seem to care. "Don't give up just because the meeting didn't go well. If you apologize, Jacob, I'll ask my dad to give you another chance," Sarah said arrogantly. "Why should I apologize?" I felt my anger rising, and I said firmly, "I have nothing to apologize for. I'm serious about both ending the engagement and filing the complaint." Then Sarah, trying to play the tragic hero, said, "My father could easily squash something like a police report. He could even make this broken engagement disappear if it happened now." I couldn't believe her audacity. How dare she act so superior? Then even Sarah's dad joined in, saying, "Sarah, we're better off without a man like this. Go ahead, file a police report if you want. I doubt you have enough evidence for it to mean anything anyway," he sneered, laughing mockingly. Like father, like daughter. That phrase suddenly felt very fitting. "Are you sure about that?" I decided to disrupt their laughter. You have no proof that I did anything, so the police can't do anything. You thought I'd back down if you mentioned a police report, didn't you, fool? You should know better than to think that would scare me, I said, hands on hips. Sarah's father laughed confidently. That's when I decided to reveal the reality of the situation. Actually, that's the evidence. Apparently not understanding what I meant, the three of them just stared at me in disbelief. I pulled out my phone and played a recording. I had been recording everything since before I arrived. I needed evidence that my injuries were caused by them. No matter how high up they were in a big corporation, they couldn't escape an assault charge when the evidence was clear. Instead of apologizing, Sarah's father started yelling at me. How dare you? Go ahead, file your report. There's no way I'm letting you marry Sarah. Sarah's mom, who had been quiet until now, began to panic. We can still forgive him if we do it now, right, honey? She pleaded. No need. As I said earlier, the engagement is off and I will file a report. I don't want to marry someone who doesn't care when their fiancé is injured and who joins their parents in making fun of me, I declared. When I said that, Sarah, who had been looking down on me until just now, started to panic. You're lying, Jacob. You said you wanted to marry me, you liar. Sarah's dad then erupted, you low-educated punk. I'll never forgive you, and lunged at me. His punch caught me off guard, knocking me to the ground. Sarah's mom desperately tried to stop her husband from continuing to attack me while I was down. Honey, this is bad. We don't know who might be watching, she pleaded, but Sarah's dad didn't stop. You're just a figurehead CEO. You used that to lure Sarah, and now you're going to sue me. I'll sue you for fraud. Then I'll have to cancel our $5 million order with your company, he threatened. I had been contemplating it for a while, and I had made up my mind. I was going to corner this man as much as possible. What are you talking about, $5 million? There's no way you can make a deal like that. Sarah's father scoffed, getting off me and calling me an idiot. It was time to show him reality. I called my mother. What are you going to achieve by calling your mother? Sarah told me mockingly, you only have one parent. How sad that you only have your mother to help you in times like this. It really does make a difference not having a father, huh? Sarah's father, unaware of what was coming, continued to look down on me. It was almost comical. About 10 minutes later, the moment I had been waiting for arrived. Sarah's father's phone started ringing. He said it was from his company and answered the call. At first he spoke confidently, but his speech gradually became sluggish, and his face turned pale. As soon as he ended the call, he glared at me. What the hell have you done? He demanded. I did exactly what I said earlier. I canceled the order. I didn't want to do business with a company that looks down on people for their education level or family background, I explained calmly. Sarah's father still seemed skeptical. There's no way someone with your low education level could do that. Do you have connections or something? He scoffed, continuing to belittle me for my limited education. I lost all interest in continuing the conversation. Believe what you want. Goodbye, I said and turned to leave. Wait a minute. Sarah's father tried to chase after me, shouting, but he was stopped by Sarah and her mother, demanding, What's this about $5 million? What was that phone call about? He was stuck. It was true that I only finished middle school, and it could be said that I just caught the startup wave. But with the money I saved with my mother, I started a successful business that traded with major companies. Now I had my mother, who was the vice president of my company, contact Sarah's father's company. I didn't want to mix personal matters with work, but I had reached my limit. When I got home and saw my mother's usual cheerful face, I felt guilty for bringing my personal matters into it. I felt like my time as a CEO was over, and I regretted making my mother take on such an unpleasant role. Sorry, Mom, for making you make that unpleasant call. I apologized. But instead of being upset, my mother was smiling. When I asked her why, she said, I came up with a good idea and decided on my own, without consulting you, the CEO. It turns out, when my mother called the president of the other company, she told them what Sarah's father had done to me. She suggested that if Sarah's father was fired, the cancellation of the order could be revoked. By the time I got home, the president of the other company had called to say that Sarah's father had indeed been fired. True to her word, my mother continued the order. I didn't mind making the call, and we didn't have to search for another supplier. We simply removed a toxic individual who only cared about status and insulted others. With that, my mother encouraged me as if there was nothing to worry about. Afterwards, I received numerous calls and emails from Sarah, pressuring me to marry her, so I blocked her number. According to a story I heard from a middle school classmate, after this incident, Sarah found out I was the CEO and approached me at the reunion. She likely wanted to be the CEO's wife and began dating me, discussing marriage. Sarah's father was arrested because I filed a complaint. Sarah's mother, who had been boasting about her husband's job at a major company, couldn't bear the neighborhood's judgment upon learning he was arrested. She seemed to have disappeared somewhere, leaving Sarah behind. It was a fitting end for a mother and daughter who were solely concerned about their image. I maintained our contract with the company where Sarah's father had worked, and we now have a good relationship. There are discussions about new projects, and it seems like my days will remain busy but fulfilling for a while. I really want some chocolate cake, but I'm stuck in bed feeling awful. Suddenly, my mother-in-law Grace starts yelling at me to get her a cake right now. I couldn't take it anymore and snapped at her. I told her to get her own cake because I only have a month left to live. My name is Olivia, and I'm 28 years old. I met my husband David through a friend, and we got married after dating for 3 years. We don't have kids yet, but we're enjoying our time together. David's family owns a small factory with about 30 workers. They're doing pretty well in their area. The company was started by David's late dad and has grown thanks to everyone's hard work. Now David's sister, Sophia, is in charge of the company. She's not married, but she's really good at running the business. David thinks she got her skills from mom because they both have great communication abilities. Sophia is really nice and easy to talk to, even when we first met. Sophia, my sister-in-law, greeted me warmly, calling me cute and expressing her happiness to have me as a sister. As someone who only had brothers, it felt nice to gain a sister. However, despite this pleasant start, there's a problem with my mother-in-law. Our company has coffee breaks at 10 o'clock a.m. and 3 o'clock p.m. Times I dread. Here's why. Whenever I'm asked to get mom's coffee, it instantly ruins my mood. Our family home is next to the factory, and after my father-in-law passed away, my mother-in-law chose to retire and stay home. She seems to look forward to these coffee breaks, always saying, "I've been waiting for you, Olivia." I wanted to talk to Sophia once, but she gave me a disappointed look. Naturally, she wasn't in a good mood, and before leaving with a forced smile, she said, "Hey, I have something to say to you. So sit here," and then she complains to me until the break is over. She often comments about why we haven't had kids yet, saying it's not something we can control. If I stay quiet, she gets even more irritated. Why such a gloomy face? I wonder why David chose someone like you. Plus, even your parents, who knows how long you'll live. The sooner the better. She said that with a sigh. Hearing her talk like that, especially about my parents, really hurts. And there's a reason for that. When David and I decided to get married and met his family, this happened. What, you don't have parents? My mother-in-law looked shocked when I told her. It's not like I never had parents. My mom passed away from cancer when I was 10, and my dad died of a heart attack when I was 20. My memories of my mom are fuzzy, but my dad raised my brother and me all by himself. I deeply regret that he passed away before I could repay his kindness. When people hear about my situation, they usually look at me with pity and say, "You must have had a hard time." But my mother-in-law reacted differently. "So you might not live long either, huh?" She actually said that while I was stunned by her response. It was so rude and insensitive. My husband David told me that despite my shock, my mother-in-law kept complaining, insisting it was an important issue. Should I rethink this marriage? Just as I was considering that, Sophia, who had been quiet until then, suddenly slammed her hand on the table and said, "What are you talking about?" She said it so quietly that everyone in the room froze. Then my mother-in-law said, "Right, Sophia, you agree with me, don't you?" That's what she said. Sophia's response was icy. "What?" I told Mom, "David chose Olivia himself, and she's wonderful. Why can't you support that?" She said this to my mother-in-law with a cold stare. My mother-in-law, who adored her daughter, seemed shocked by Sophia's words. After that, she stopped making mean comments except when we were alone. Even during the coffee breaks, she looked disappointed when I brought her coffee instead of Sophia. Luckily, David and I rented a room near his family home. so I only had to endure her complaints during those 10-minute coffee breaks. I'm relieved we don't live together. But my peace was suddenly shattered that year. A record-breaking hurricane brought a lot of misfortune my way. Olivia, something terrible has happened. I'd never heard David sound so panicked. I hurried to the living room and found it in chaos. What's going on? Our ceiling was leaking badly because of the hurricane. It wasn't just our room, the owner told us it was happening in other rooms too. It seemed impossible to fix while staying there, so we needed to find somewhere else to live. Sophia suggested cheerfully, "Why worry? Just stay with us. Your commute will be 30 seconds. She said this innocently, so we ended up staying with David's family for a while. Welcome home, David. It must have been tough, but Mom is happy we can live together again. My mother-in-law greeted us warmly, but David mostly ignored her, acting like a rebellious teenager. Then she said, "Oh, Olivia, you're here too. I didn't notice because you're so quiet. Smile more." My husband looked frustrated, and all I could do was force a smile, knowing we'd be staying there for a while. After moving in, I noticed something odd. The first time was during dinner on our first night. Wanting to show my appreciation, I cooked bread, soup, and steak. It wasn't fancy, but my mother-in-law and sister-in-law said it was delicious and finished it all. I felt genuinely relieved. After a while, my mother-in-law suddenly stood up and brought a container from the fridge, humming a tune. She opened it and piled a ton of its contents onto her steak. Mom, you're still eating that stuff." My husband, sitting next to me, looked disgusted. Sophia, my sister-in-law, rolled her eyes and said she won't stop no matter how many times I tell her. "I've given up." Then she burst into laughter. At first, I couldn't tell what was on top of the steak, but upon closer inspection, I realized it was jam. While it's not uncommon to have sweet sauces on meat, adding jam to a seasoned steak seemed bizarre. "When you eat something salty, you crave something sweet, right?" "That's why," she said, looking quite pleased with herself. Honestly, it gave me heartburn just watching her. For the record, I'm not a fan of sweet sauces on meat. "Come on, Olivia, why don't you try it? It's delicious," my mother-in-law said, turning to me. For the first time, I didn't want to eat it, but I forced a smile. Apparently, that wasn't the reaction she was hoping for. "I'm recommending it for a reason. You might live longer if you follow my example." With that parting shot, she retreated to her room, leaving me speechless. My husband and sister-in-law apologized, saying, Sorry, Mom's at it again with her nonsense." Apparently, my mother-in-law has a serious sweet tooth and doesn't feel her day is complete without eating cake. Surprisingly, her annual health checkups always come back normal. Come to think of it, she's always eating cake during our 3:00 p.m. coffee breaks. I remembered that I like cake too, but having it every day would be boring. Plus, what about blood sugar levels? I've always been careful about my health, especially since my parents had short lifespans. So my mother-in-law's jam steak was quite surprising. Wait till Sophia buy cake every day. Caught off guard, Sophia admitted, "Yeah, she makes me go buy it. She says it's embarrassing for her to do it herself." Thanks to that, I've become good friends with all the local cake shops, Sophia said, laughing. My husband, David, chimed in, "Sophia, this isn't a laughing matter. Mom's getting older. She needs to start caring about her health. I've always left it to Sophia to deal with Mom, and I feel bad about it." With that, he looked frustrated. "Well, I think you guys will have to help out more from now on," Sophia said cheerfully, and I prepared myself for more interactions with my mother-in-law. Living with my in-laws made my commute much shorter, so I took the lead in doing household chores before and after work. I tried to talk to my mother-in-law, but she often ignored me or gave me the cold shoulder. Despite that, she never missed a chance to complain about the kids during our coffee breaks. Since moving here, I've been having more rough days. It's probably the stress. My mood was low and my husband noticed. He offered several times to go to the doctor with me. "Let's move out and stay at a hotel for a while," he suggested, but I turned it down because it felt like a waste of money, and the nearest hotel was still a bit far. Then the worst news came, a week-long business trip. I was stunned when my husband told me. The reason for my dread? Sophia, my sister-in-law, would also be going, meaning I'd be alone with my mother-in-law. Yeah, I said it. My husband offered to take me with him, but I thought, it's just a week. I hope I can manage, especially since I still wasn't feeling well. On the day they left, Sophia sent me a mother-in-law survival guide to my phone. If anything happens, just give her cake and you'll be fine. I couldn't help but laugh. The guide included local cake shops and my mother-in-law's favorite cakes from each. For someone like me who was gearing up for a tough week, this information was a lifesaver. In a week, our home renovations would be done, and we could move back. I thought optimistically. I could handle this, but that hope faded on the first night. When I returned from work, my mother-in-law was blocking the entrance. "You know why I'm angry, don't you?" she snapped. "No, I don't. I'm not psychic," I replied, losing patience. "You missed both the 10 o'clock a.m. and 3 o'clock p.m. coffee breaks today." Her words caught me off guard. Indeed, with my husband and Sophia away and end-of-month tasks piling up, I'd completely forgotten about my mother-in-law's coffee breaks, and I never had a coffee break myself. I thought she'd understand since she used to work, but she yelled at me the moment we were alone. "You start this harassment, you wicked woman," she said with an angry look. I felt a huge disconnect. Why was I being yelled at like this? Did I deserve to be called wicked? Suppressing my anger, I thought, "It's just a few more days," and said, "I did buy cake during my lunch break. It's in the office fridge. Sorry I didn't bring it here." Her face instantly changed from angry to smiling. "Let's forget about today. Don't forget tomorrow, okay?" she said cheerfully and went back to her room. From then on, I made sure never to forget the coffee breaks, knowing how much trouble it would cause if I upset my mother-in-law. On the day my husband and Sophia were supposed to return, I felt incredibly stressed. I was hit with nausea, headaches, and a loss of appetite. I took the day off and went to the hospital. "It's pretty serious. Can your family come right away?" I couldn't stop crying at the doctor's words. I was told I have cancer and at most 6 months, maybe even just 1 month, to live. I returned home, my face stained with tears, my body trembling, and collapsed onto the bed. The door burst open. "What are you doing, skipping work? Sophie and David are working hard, and you're slacking off?" Her yelling worsened my headache. I didn't have the energy to respond, so I just said, "I'm not feeling well," and closed my eyes. Mother-in-law didn't seem to care. She didn't want to leave the room and kept complaining to me. She said things like, "That's why you can't have kids, and who knows if you'll live long." I just stayed silent, pretending to be asleep. Then suddenly, she asked about today's coffee break. Is she really this insensitive? I thought, opening my eyes to see her standing over me. "Grace, I'm sorry. I'm not feeling well enough to go shopping today. Could you please?" She cut me off. "I don't care. I want chocolate cake now." "Go buy it. You're probably faking it," she screamed at me louder than ever. My frustration exploded at the woman in front of me, who was acting selfishly like a child. "Shut up. Listen to me. I have 1 month to live. Go buy your own damn cake, you idiot." My words seemed to shock my mother-in-law, who stared at me wide-eyed. Then, from behind her, "Mom, what are you doing? And Olivia, what do you mean by 1 more month?" My husband, looking pale, and my sister-in-law, equally concerned, were standing there. "Oh, weren't you supposed to come back tomorrow?" Ignoring the visibly shaken mother-in-law, my husband came to my side. I felt so relieved by his action that I burst into tears. "I can't take it anymore. The doctor says it might be cancer, and I'm not feeling well, but you keep nagging me to go buy cake. Enough is enough. Stop bothering me about the kids too. Just leave me alone, you idiot." I let out all my resentment towards my mother-in-law while crying. My husband and sister-in-law looked at her with cold eyes. "Sending a sick person to buy cake. Are you stupid?" Sophia, who's usually all smiles, had a face I'd never seen before, a terrifying one. "You've been making snide remarks about the kids. Look, I didn't say anything because it's a private matter, but the reason we can't have kids is me." My husband raised his voice as he said this. In reality, about a year after we got married, we consulted a doctor because we were having trouble conceiving. The test showed that I was fine, but my husband's numbers were low. He felt really down about it and kept apologizing to me with a sad face. I didn't want to make him feel that way, so I avoided talking about kids as much as possible. I did want children, but I thought life with just my husband was enough. I never considered leaving him because we couldn't have kids. I didn't tell my mother-in-law because I knew she'd start nagging. She listened to my husband's words with a face like her soul had been sucked out. Just then, my cell phone rang. The caller ID showed it was the hospital. Hello, yes, right now. My husband just got home. Okay, understood. The doctor who had called earlier sounded urgent, asking us to come right away. Am I really that sick? I started to cry from the anxiety. It's okay, Olivia. Can you stand? I'm with you. My husband, who also looked like he was about to cry, and I rushed to the hospital. As we were leaving, I caught a glimpse of my mother-in-law getting a stern lecture from Sophia. When we arrived at the hospital, we were immediately ushered into a room where the doctor and even the hospital director were waiting to offer us a deep apology. It was a misdiagnosis. According to the doctor, they had mixed up my medical records with another patient who had the same name and birth date as me. I couldn't believe such a thing could happen, but the doctor did look extremely worn out. This incident was later covered in a local news segment, and the hospital vowed to review its working conditions. We were then referred to another hospital. When we returned to my in-laws' house, my mother-in-law seemed to have been scolded by Sophia and was shrinking in her seat. Sophia later told me she was worried that her newlywed son might lose his wife and be heartbroken. It might be love turned inside out, but it was a real hassle seeing our tear-streaked faces. Even my mother-in-law broke down. Did I really do something that bad? She started crying. So what about Olivia? Sophia asked with a concerned look. I'm pregnant, I said, tears of joy filling my eyes. My husband was also shedding tears of happiness beside me. We immediately went to the maternity hospital as advised. It's still early, but yes, you're pregnant. We can confirm the heartbeat. Hearing that, we both burst into tears, even though we were in a hospital. Sophia also cried, saying, I'm so glad, so very glad. As for what happened next, Sophia got engaged to her long-term boyfriend and moved to another state with him after quitting her job. We had heard about this beforehand, so it wasn't a surprise. My husband, who was taking over as the new CEO, seemed to have his hands full with client visits. The business trip, by the way, was for that reason. He told me later that he was able to come home a day early because it ended sooner than expected. Mother-in-law seemed to know nothing about it. What? Getting married, quitting her job, and moving to another state. She was shocked. Sophia told her, Yeah, I told you. Remember? Well, it doesn't matter. It's settled. Mother-in-law was in a daze, and we all laughed. We returned home to find our leaky roof repaired and our room looking brand new. We cheered in delight. Things remained awkward with mother-in-law. My husband was angrier than I was and said he never wanted to see her again. But mother-in-law started showing up occasionally during our coffee breaks, holding not cake but small snacks like biscuits. She had stopped the daily cakes and jam steaks, apparently trying to be more health-conscious now that she knew a grandchild was on the way. Employees who had worked there since my father-in-law was CEO seemed happy to see mother-in-law. So I realized she wasn't inherently a bad person. Our conversations gradually increased, and she stopped complaining. When our daughter Emma was born, mother-in-law transformed. She started doing things like buying diapers and leaving side dishes for dinner, saying, Feel free to eat. You're always working so hard. Even when she knew I was home, she'd send a message and leave without ringing the doorbell. The side dishes were in a cooler, and I appreciated her thoughtfulness. I felt I could get along with this version of mother-in-law. What really convinced me was when Emma was born. Mother-in-law took my hand and said, Thank you, Olivia. Really, thank you. Seeing her tears, I knew she was sincere. Sophia also seems to be doing well and recently announced her pregnancy. It seems like it won't be long before we all gather at the in-laws' house for a friendly meal. She said I'm only good enough for dog food, she grumbled. Wow, I never thought I'd feel so embarrassed. Even though we just got married, I've been trying to do things her way. But it seems like it's not enough. Maybe she's from another planet or something. That would explain a lot. I don't understand her language anymore, but I don't really want to talk to her anyway. My name's Allison. I'm 32 and work in an office. I think I got into games because of my older brother who loves them. I've loved games since I was little, especially ones where I pretend to be someone else in a made-up world. I've made a lot of friends online, including my husband Carmen. We both love the same game and have our favorite characters and spells. Whenever a new game comes out, we go buy it together. After hanging out like this for a while, we started to like each other and decided to get married. Carmen's parents are Stanley, who's often away on work trips, and Bianca, who takes care of things at home. Stanley's hardly ever home because of his job. Carmen's grandma, who has Alzheimer's, lives with them too. She's been having a hard time remembering things, especially since Grandpa started traveling. It was a big surprise for everyone. Bianca takes care of Grandma because Carmen used to live alone. So it's just Bianca and Grandma at Carmen's parents' house. I worried about having to take care of someone who wasn't even my parent someday. But Carmen's parents are still healthy, so that day seems far away. I felt pretty relaxed until I got that one phone call. One day, I had some free time, so I finished up my chores and started playing my favorite game. Then, I heard a strange sound in my room. What's that noise? Oh, it's my phone ringing. I don't usually get calls, so I forgot what my ringtone sounded like. When I saw it was Bianca calling, I felt a bit nervous. It was the first time she had ever called me, and I wondered if something was wrong. So I answered quickly, saying, "Hello. You took your time. It's common courtesy for a responsible adult to answer promptly when someone calls." Her sudden sarcasm made me want to hang up, but I stayed on the line. "Sorry, I'll try to be quicker next time. What can I help you with?" As if you have time off on your days off, right? Playing with those silly games? You should be doing your duties as Carmen's wife. After Bianca abruptly hung up, she told me to visit Carmen's parents' house on my next day off. I felt bewildered for a while. Why did I have to deal with sarcasm from a rare phone call? I thought about ignoring it, but she's Carmen's mother, so I figured I should just hear her out. That's how I decided to approach it. Later that night, I told Carmen about the call. "I'm really sorry. It might be a hassle, so you don't have to come with me." It was reassuring to hear him say that, even though it was frustrating. Sometimes I just need a place to unwind after work. "Hello. Oh, Allison, is something on your mind?" Susan from the pottery school greeted me warmly. I went there feeling lighthearted, but now I'm fully engaged in conversation. Susan is around the same age as my grandma, but still vibrant and ready to listen to my problems. She's like a mother figure to everyone. Pottery is fun, but I mostly come here to chat with Susan. "Listen to this, Susan," I began, venting to my friend. I got a rare call from Bianca, and it was just one sarcastic comment after another. "You must have plenty of free time," she said, "or do your duty as a wife." I never expected to hear such outdated remarks. Susan always listens to my complaints without judgment. Just ignore Bianca's nonsense. There are still plenty of old-fashioned people out there. People who talk like that often have double standards. My son's wife deals with the same thing. While I may not have lucked out with Bianca, I'm surrounded by kind people like Susan. It naturally encourages me to keep pushing forward. On my next day off, I followed Bianca's instructions and went over to my in-laws' house. When I parked and approached the door, Bianca was already waiting there. "Oh great," I muttered nervously, trying to keep calm. "Good morning. You're supposed to be here 30 minutes earlier. Don't keep your superiors waiting," she scolded. I had just arrived, and already I wanted to turn around and leave. I can understand being punctual for work, but why should I be scolded for her convenience? Besides, arriving 30 minutes early can be inconvenient for the other person, which I didn't want to do. "Well, it's only 10 minutes early," I tried to explain, but she cut me off. "Don't talk back. Am I running a military camp?" I sighed, feeling defeated. I will never trust this person again, no matter what. And I won't ever agree to take care of her when she's old, even if she offers me a lot of money. No way. "Fine then, you're late for our appointment. Anyway, I'm leaving now," Bianca said, ready to walk away. "But wait," I stopped her. "You call me here without any explanation, and I have no idea what's going on." "Well, I'm going out until tonight, so you'll have to come here on your days off from now on. Do the housework and take care of the person in the back room," Bianca said before driving off. I've never met someone so difficult to communicate with. She seemed nice when I met her with Stanley and Carmen, but that wasn't the case at all. I thought about just going home without doing anything to avoid getting yelled at again. But more than that, I hadn't met my grandmother-in-law yet. Bianca had mentioned her, but since she didn't understand, she decided I didn't need to come to the family wedding. By the way, we only had a simple meal and didn't have a wedding ceremony. Carmen and I were supposed to visit her together later, but our days off never lined up, and embarrassingly, we never made it. As I opened the entrance door, a shocking sight greeted me. It was a mess. It wasn't quite a garbage dump, but it looked like it wouldn't take long to become one. The room was cluttered with stuff, and there was a pile of laundry, clean or dirty, scattered on the floor. The kitchen sink was overflowing with dishes, dust was gathering in the corners, and it was visibly disgusting. The last time I was here, the place was clean and tidy. What on earth happened? This is awful. As I pondered, I heard noises coming from the back room. Ah, it must be my grandmother-in-law, I thought, deciding to go and greet her. Excuse me. Since the day Bianca called me, I've been going to my in-laws' house as instructed. I've come to realize that Bianca probably spends her days out and only comes home late at night. She doesn't seem to take care of the house or her grandmother-in-law at all. While she bosses me around, telling me to fulfill my wife's duties, it's clear she isn't doing much herself. Maybe she got carried away because I obeyed her commands. She once loudly said, "I'm relieved that Carmen, who always plays with toys, finally brought home a wife. But after all, a wife is just a stranger. I guess you're like a free housekeeper. In this day and age, treating your son's wife like this is completely unacceptable." Of course, I told Carmen everything Bianca did, and he kept apologizing every time he heard about it. "You don't have to go to that house anymore," he would say. He even offered to talk to Bianca himself, but I asked him to hold off because I had a plan. I kept visiting my in-laws' house because I was worried about my grandmother-in-law. When Carmen saw that she and I got along well, he was really pleased. After a few months of those routine visits, while I was cleaning my in-laws' house as usual, Bianca said, "There's a memorial service at the end of this month and people will gather. Just make sure you don't say anything unnecessary, all right?" I smiled and replied, "Of course, Bianca," but it seemed like Bianca wasn't completely satisfied with my response. The memorial service was for Carmen's grandfather on his death anniversary. He had passed away before I married Carmen, but he was known to be a gentle and kind person. He and my grandmother-in-law got along very well and used to travel together. Carmen told me they always held hands when they were out. Grandfather-in-law had died of cancer, and my grandmother-in-law had taken care of him devotedly, with no help from my parents-in-law. It's just unbelievable. There's a lot of preparation to do, so make sure you come early, all right? And I think you know what to do, Bianca added. Bianca said that, and I cheerfully responded, "Yes, I'll act 30 minutes early." But she scolded me, "Your voice is too loud, be quiet." I thought about throwing the TV remote at her but managed to hold back. "You can't talk like that now, but just wait, get ready," she warned. I looked forward to the day of the memorial service, eagerly anticipating it. I was told to come 30 minutes early, but I arrived an hour early. Apparently, that was too much for Bianca, who came out of the entrance angry, saying, "You're too early." There's such a thing as too much. Honestly, when I saw her face, she looked like a monster to me. I quickly cleaned the room and set up the tables. When I heard a cheerful male voice say, "Good morning," as he approached the entrance, I saw the staff from a famous local steakhouse standing there. I had been there once with Carmen, and the meat was tender and delicious. But it's not something I can afford to do often. Ignoring me, Bianca eagerly engaged with the handsome staff, saying, "Good morning. Nice weather today, isn't it?" I could hear someone saying, "Ooh," for the first time, and then I went back to my preparations. "Hey, hurry up and bring in the food that arrived early," I heard Bianca's annoying voice. Resignedly, I headed to the kitchen, thinking yes, yes. But there, I noticed something odd. "How, Bianca, there's one meal missing. Is this a mistake? Should I call?" When I said that, Bianca smirked and said, "It's not a mistake. I never prepared a portion for you." I was shocked. I never expected to be treated this way. Everyone's gathered today, and you, my son's wife, won't even have time to eat. "How rude," she said. It felt like she was praising me, but I felt angry. Even though I didn't argue back, she seemed pleased and said, "You're just like a maid. Come on, say bow." Then she brought out leftover dog food from when they used to have a dog at my in-laws' house. I couldn't help but laugh at her humiliating gesture. I couldn't understand this woman at all. I thought maybe she was from another planet or something. I didn't want to talk to someone I couldn't communicate with, so I pretended to speak an alien language and shouted at her. For a moment, Bianca looked scared by my sudden behavior. "Are you crazy? Are you making fun of me?" she asked. "Yes, maybe I am. I've been putting up with this for a while now. I don't like living with someone as mean as you," I replied. "I don't know what you're upset about, but would you be happy if we got a dive? Divorce? No way. I won't allow it. I'd have to hire another maid, and that would be a waste of money. She interrupted, trying to grab me. Stop it? How embarrassing, I said, turning around to see Carmen and my father-in-law Stanley, along with Stanley's brother and his wife, who had come from far away. Bianca didn't notice them because we were arguing, but it was time for Carmen and the others to arrive. I'm not sure how long they had been watching, but Bianca suddenly became quiet, maybe because Stanley stepped in or because she was shocked. Then the priest came to the house. The memorial service ended simply, and it was time to eat. But my grandmother-in-law stayed in her room, saying she wasn't feeling well. I haven't had steak in a while, but it's really good here, Stanley said as I busied myself bringing drinks and such. Allison, come and eat too. You don't need to do all this, my aunt-in-law said kindly. Thank you, but it looks like there's no steak left for me. I pretended to be sad. When Cindy asked why, I said, I can't really say. Please ask Bianca. Cindy glared at Bianca, who seemed scared by her look, and started saying something strange. Oh, I ordered the wrong number of steaks. I offered my portion to Allison, but she said she didn't want it. I'm so lucky to have such a nice woman in the family. Bianca was sweating a lot, and her eyes were darting around. Cindy looked at me worriedly. Yes, that's right. Behind Cindy, I could see Bianca's face completely at ease. That face was so funny, I struggled not to laugh. Bianca is always so nice. She tells me when I'm not polite. Today, instead of steak, she prepared this for me. I said and brought out the dog food Bianca had given me from the kitchen. Bianca looked scared at my unexpected move. What's happening? What did you do to my wife? Carmen asked, but Bianca stayed silent. Stanley spoke up. Well, you know, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, right? Allison is part of the family now. Stanley started joking, and Carmen looked like he might grab him. Wanting to avoid any trouble, I decided to call my secret weapon Susan. Everyone was surprised by my loud call. Then from the back room, a cheerful voice answered, yes. Out came Susan, the grandmother-in-law. It turns out she's the Susan from pottery school. The day Bianca first invited me over, we were both shocked to see each other, never imagining that Susan would be the grandmother-in-law. We finished the chores at my in-laws' house together, laughing. The in-laws' house is a two-family house, and Susan's part was very neat. It was clear she wasn't sick, but Bianca never suspected. Since Bianca came home late at night, Susan and I went out to eat and for walks. I cherished the time I spent with Susan, which is why I was happy to visit my in-laws' home. Susan had asked me not to tell the family about our relationship. I was upset by Bianca's unfair words, but I knew it wouldn't last forever, so I endured it. Susan chose not to attend the memorial service because she didn't want to see the family's faces. She always prayed for my grandfather-in-law's happiness after his passing. Huh? Mom, don't you have Alzheimer's? Stanley asked, confused. That's just something this woman misunderstood, Bianca said, shrinking away under everyone's glares. What bothered me most was being excluded from the grandchildren's celebrations, Susan said, smiling at me. Bianca, not finding this funny, suddenly apologized. I'm sorry, Allison. You've always been distant to me. I was frustrated, and that's why I played that prank today. I truly regret it, but if you had been kinder from the start, maybe I wouldn't have. I never wanted to go along with this act. Bianca, all the kind words you've said to me before, I thought they meant something. That's why I recorded them, I said, pulling out a hidden voice recorder. As we played it back, Bianca's face turned pale, and the others grew serious. Susan and I had planned to reveal everything on this day, regardless of the steak incident. After listening, Cindy started laughing. You talk about social manners, but you've never worked a day in your life. It seemed Bianca had never worked and had lived a life of leisure after the children grew up. Bianca started going out more, leading to constant arguments with Stanley. Stanley himself was apparently a habitual cheater who came home late every night. He would show up at school events for appearances, but otherwise had a fake relationship, according to what Carmen had told me. Carmen couldn't stand it either and left home as soon as he finished high school. That's why pack your bags and leave right now. This is the home my late husband and I cherished. I'll never let you come back. And you too, Stanley, Susan said, glaring at him. You've got another woman out there, don't you? Do whatever you want, worthless son. I'm cutting ties with you. Stanley left hastily, maybe feeling too exposed. And Carmen, I know you're busy with work. but visit once in a while. I understand if you don't want to, with such foolish parents, Susan told Carmen, looking a little sad. Then we left the house. As Carmen and I walked away, Bianca, looking furious, chased after me. Wait, clear up this misunderstanding. If I get kicked out, I'll be in trouble. I thought if that were the case, she shouldn't have mistreated me in the first place, but her words came too late. I don't get it. Why don't you work? You seem to know how to be a decent member of society, I said sarcastically as I got into the car. She was yelling something outside, but I ignored her. Let her regret her choices however she likes. After getting kicked out of my in-laws' house, Bianca showed up at Stanley's place where he was working alone. But as Susan predicted, Stanley was already living with his mistress, and Bianca was quickly left out. It turned out Bianca had been cheating too, with a married man. She got sued by his wife for damages. Since both our former in-laws had cheated, the damages kind of balanced out, but Bianca still had to pay. Stanley might have to pay less if his mistress's wife also sues him, but they're strangers to me now, and I don't care. They were a match in a weird way, despite their fake relationship. Carmen has no attachment to them and never wants to see them again. I feel the same. We decided to live in the in-laws' house with Susan. We got rid of all the furniture Bianca had picked out and changed the inside a lot, so it feels like a new home. Susan is surprisingly lively for her age, but I'm happy to take care of her if she needs it. Plus, next year, our family will be growing. I'm excited to have a happy life with my loved ones from now on. I can't find my special bracelet. I think my mother-in-law might have taken it without asking again. Don't be upset, it's a gift from Mom. Just try to accept it, my husband said. I often notice that my mother-in-law takes my things without asking, and my husband always supports her. I feel frustrated because he doesn't stand up for me. It's tough for me. Then something terrible happened. Someone stole my husband's favorite fancy car. I know who did it. My name is Emma, and I'm 28 years old. My happy life with my husband, Ethan, started to fall apart about a year after we got married. We both have jobs. But I finish work earlier, so I go home and start making dinner. That day, while waiting for my husband to come home, he surprised me with some big news. Mom's coming to stay with us from next week onwards. Wait, really? She's staying overnight? I couldn't believe it. My husband let out a big sigh. No, she's not just staying overnight. She's moving in. Moving in? Like living with us? I asked, trying to understand. Yeah, exactly. Since Dad passed away, Mom's been on her own. She's getting older, and it's tough for her, my husband explained. Wait a minute. You can't just decide this without talking to me. We have our own lives too. Can't you give me some time to think about it? I pleaded. But my husband just smiled and shrugged it off. It's okay, Mom wants to feel safe. She just wants to stay with us. I understand she might feel lonely and scared, but you made this big decision without asking me. Couldn't you have at least talked to me about it? Why do I have to tell you everything? She's my mom, he argued back. That's exactly it. She's your mom, not mine. I have to change everything because of this. What are you so upset about anyway? It's decided. Just deal with it, I argued back. Wait. I called out, but my husband ignored me and left the room, leaving me feeling frustrated. How could he decide we're all going to live together without even talking to me about it? I still have to adjust, no matter what. Ethan doesn't help out around the house and acts like it's no big deal because she's his mom. We've tried talking about it, but he just says, it's done, and shuts down the conversation. As expected, the next week, his mom, my mother-in-law, showed up at our house like it was planned. If she was a normal person, I wouldn't mind living together, but every time I see her, she says mean things and treats me badly. That's why I avoid going to her house unless I have to. But now, suddenly, we're supposed to live together. As I expected, my mother-in-law started criticizing me from the very first day. Emma, did you know I was coming today? There's trash in the corner, she scolded. I'm sorry, I was working and didn't have time to clean, I explained. Excuses. Couldn't you have cleaned up after work? But then I wouldn't have time to make dinner. Oh, come on. Stop arguing back. How do you even handle being Ethan's wife? Be more efficient. I'm sorry, I stuttered. Just 10 minutes in our house, and it's already like this. I'm really worried about what's going to happen next. From that day on, my mother-in-law's controlling behavior got worse, and it stressed me out constantly. Then one day, I came home from work, and my mother-in-law greeted me with a big smile, saying, "Welcome home." I usually don't get such a warm welcome, so it felt strange. Then I noticed something shiny around her neck. Wait, is that my necklace? It looked just like mine. Feeling uneasy, I hurried to my room and checked my jewelry box. My suspicion was right. I went straight to the living room and confronted my mother-in-law, who was sitting there calmly. "That necklace, it's mine, isn't it?" I accused. "Oh, we finally noticed. It looks good on me, doesn't it?" She replied shamelessly. "What are you talking about? Stop using my things without asking." "What's the big deal? It's not like it's going to disappear or anything." "But that's not the issue here. Stop complaining and get dinner ready. Ethan will be home soon." Even while I was getting dinner ready, my mother-in-law kept interfering, making me more and more stressed. That night, I couldn't take it anymore and decided to talk to my husband. "Hey, Ethan, can we talk?" "What's on your mind?" "Today I found your mother wearing my necklace without asking." "Oh, so you're saying she went into my room, opened my jewelry box, and basically took it. Isn't that a bit of an exaggeration?" "How am I exaggerating?" "Come on, I'm sure Mom didn't mean any harm." I felt angry that my husband was taking his mother's side. Trying to stay calm, I continued to explain. "So you're saying it's fine to just go into someone's room without asking and take their things? A normal person would at least apologize." "Well, Mom probably just saw something she liked and took it." "But that's not the point, Ethan. You need to talk to her." "What? Me? Your mother disrespects me. Telling her off won't do anything, so you, her son, need to do it." "Okay, fine. I'll handle it, all right." Despite my insistence, it seemed my husband forgot about it by the next day. I shot him a few angry looks, but he never confronted his mother. Since then, my mother-in-law started using my things without asking, basically borrowing them without permission. No matter how much I complained, she didn't listen. And since there are no locks on the doors in this house, telling her off would be pointless unless she changes her ways. If this keeps happening, I'll end up losing my belongings. I have to stop my mother-in-law's behavior. I need to come up with some sort of plan. Then, one day, something happened that I absolutely couldn't forgive. It's missing. How could this happen? Today, I had plans to meet up with a friend and wanted to wear my late mother's bracelet for the occasion. It's a precious item, so I never keep it in the jewelry box. Instead, it's hidden deep in my desk drawer. And yet, it's gone. The only person who could have taken it is my mother-in-law. When I confront her firmly, she casually admits to taking it. "Of that bracelet, I just borrowed it." "Then give it back right now. I need it." "I can't do that." "Why not?" "Because I sold it." "What? You stole it? Is this some kind of joke? Who steals someone else's stuff?" Though shaken, I stood my ground. "Stop kidding around. Give it back now." "I'm not kidding, by the way. Most of the things I've borrowed from you, I sold those too." "What? What were you thinking?" As I argued with my mother-in-law, my husband Ethan, who had just woken up, joined us. "Ethan, listen to this." Quickly, I explained the situation. "Your mom sold my bracelet, the one that belonged to my late mom. Plus, she's been selling off most of the things she's borrowed from me without asking." "Mom, is this true?" Faced with the question, my mother-in-law stuck out her tongue in a teasing way. "I'm on a fixed income, you know. I don't want to be a burden, but I can't make ends meet without a little extra cash." "You've got to be joking. Who gave you the right?" "Don't get so upset. I didn't mean any harm." "If you meant no harm, you wouldn't be selling and taking other people's things." "That's because," but I interrupted her. "Where did you sell it? Get it back right now." Just then, my husband yelled, "Enough is enough." He wasn't looking at his mom, though. He was glaring at me. Confused, I asked him, "Why are you yelling at me, Ethan? Your mom took my bracelet without asking." "Be quiet. I did it for Mom. Stop complaining." "For Mom? Seriously. Why should I give up my precious things for her?" "Because it makes Mom happy. She's your mother-in-law. Show some respect. Just do as you're told." I couldn't handle it anymore. Not his mom stealing from me and not Ethan taking her side. I couldn't live like this anymore. Driven by growing anger, I shouted, "That's it. If you won't give it back, let's get a divorce." "Stop joking about divorce." "I'm not joking. I'm serious." "Fine, whatever. I'll get the divorce papers today." "Fine, if that's what you want. I'm okay with it. As we argued, I noticed a satisfied look on his mom's face. She never liked me. Her real goal was probably to get rid of me and have this house to herself and her son. That night, my husband came home with divorce papers filled out. After signing them, I started packing. I decided to wait for the right moment to leave. The next day, during my work break, I saw multiple missed calls from my sister Sophia, who lived nearby. Something must have happened. I called her back, and she told me shocking news. Wait, Sophia, is that true? It is, no doubt about it. It's not common around here, but why? I took a photo, so I'll send it. Make sure to check it on your end too, sis. Okay, got it. After hanging up, my sister sent the photo. It was undeniable evidence that could expose my mother-in-law. When I got home and was calmly making dinner, my husband Ethan rushed in, looking worried. Emma, this is serious. What happened? My car, my prize car, is gone. Wow, that's serious. Why aren't you more worried? You know how much that car means to me. I do. It's the car I've been dreaming of since I was single, and I finally bought it last year, remember? Exactly. So be more concerned. We're still paying off the loan for it. Where could it have gone? Please don't tell me. Emma, did you take it? Of course not. I have my own car, and I know you'd be furious if I took yours. But then where? I glanced at my mother-in-law, and she quickly looked away. That confirmed my suspicion. Ethan, I think your mom knows something. What? Why would mom know? I asked her directly, and my mother-in-law's face turned pale. What are you talking about, Emma? How is mom involved? Well, I got a call from Sophia today. Sophia, she happened to be out shopping and saw your mom driving your car. What? That car is pretty unique, being a foreign model and blue. It's quite noticeable around here. Sophia even recognized the license plate. Wait, what's happening here, Ethan? Now visibly angry, Ethan confronted his mother. Mother-in-law started making excuses. No, Ethan, I just borrowed the car for a bit. Borrowed? Seriously? I've told you so many times not to touch that car. I'm sorry, but I really wanted to drive it. What on earth did you do with the car then? Did you leave it somewhere? No, not exactly, but I did leave the keys in the ignition. Someone from the neighborhood might have taken it. Stolen? Seriously? I swear I drove the car all the way home. I'm not lying. I showed my mother-in-law a photo to prove my point. Is this why you're lying? Did you wreck the car like this? I showed her a photo from my sister, Sophia. It clearly showed my mother-in-law driving a badly damaged luxury car. My sister sent this just in case. You took Ethan's car and wrecked it so badly that you couldn't drive it back, didn't you? No, that's not what happened. Where's the car anyway? And if someone stole it from the neighborhood, someone would have noticed, right? Well, my husband started shaking next to me, his voice full of anger as he yelled at his mother with a fierce look. Are you serious? You wrecked my car, and then what? Give it back now. Calm down, Ethan. How can I stay calm? You're paying for the repairs, got it? That's impossible. I've already sold the car. Sold it? That's not possible. The car is in my name. I found a dealer who said they'd buy any car. They said I could even sell it on behalf of someone else. So I sold it for $4,000. $4,000? The luxury car my husband bought would easily go for hundreds of thousands, even if sold now. My mother-in-law got tricked by some shady dealer who didn't know the car's value and got ripped off. When my husband found out, he was furious and yelled at his mom like never before. You've got to be kidding me. Do you realize how much that car meant to me? I'm sorry, Ethan. I'll give you back the $4,000, so please forgive me. $4,000 isn't even close to enough. Get out. My husband forcefully kicked his mother out and locked the door. He turned to me defeated and muttered, I never thought Mom could cause so much trouble. I'm sorry for not supporting you earlier. Finally, you understand. Don't worry, now that she's gone, I'm over it. Let's move forward happily together. No, we won't. What? Why not? I want a divorce. Instantly, his face turned pale and he clung to me. Wait a second. I already kicked Mom out. Why divorce now? Don't you understand? I'm done with you two. My decision to divorce stands. I don't want to fix things anymore. You've taken your mom's side too many times. It's not fair. You're being too harsh. Harsh? That's rich coming from you. You didn't lift a finger when I needed support. You're so selfish. I hate you just as much as I hate your mother. My feelings won't change, Emma. Calm down. Stop it. This all happened because you chose to live with her. Think about that. I'll never forgive you. What about the car? You got what's coming to you. You deserve it. What? You feel that way? Good. I hope you struggle with double the mortgage and car payments. You deserve the consequences. You'll have to deal with it. You son of a... I left him with those words and grabbed my packed bags. On my way out, I headed straight to City Hall to file for divorce. I deleted all his contact info and cut ties completely. Later, I demanded compensation from my mother-in-law for selling my belongings without my permission. She reluctantly started working. With demands for car payments from her son, she's likely working for the rest of her life. My husband is left with house and car loans, and his life has changed significantly. He no longer goes on stress-relieving drives, spending his days off confined to the house. A hopeless case, both mother and son. Karma's a real thing, serves you right. After all this, I moved to an apartment near my workplace. Now that I'm single again, I have more financial freedom, and life is much more peaceful. Since it's my day off, maybe I'll take a drive to the beach today. This is what freedom feels like. I plan to enjoy my new life to the fullest. Geez, your mom only went to middle school and works part-time. Do you just care about money? When my mom told my future father-in-law she was a janitor, everyone laughed. He sneered seriously. A cleaning lady, that's as low as it gets. It hurt me deep. They were making fun of my mom who raised me on her own. It was so mean. I couldn't imagine being related to them. Let's just forget this happened, I said coldly, trying to move on. My name's Emily Yale. I'm 26. I graduated from a public college with a teaching degree, and now I teach English at a public high school. I enjoy my life. Today, I'm going on a date with my boyfriend, John, on a weekday, something we haven't done in a while. We're going to a restaurant he picked. Sorry, I'm late. You've had a busy week, John said when he got there. You too. Thanks for all your hard work, I said. John, my age, finished medical school and is now a resident doctor. We met in college and have been dating for 5 years. He's really kind and genuine, almost too good for me. Sometimes when we're both stressed with exams, we'd argue, but we always make up and help each other. As I ate dessert, I noticed this restaurant was fancier than usual. Suddenly, John got serious. My residency's ending soon. Being a doctor is tough, but I want us to be together through it all. Emily, will you marry me? He showed me a ring. Tears filled my eyes as I looked at him. Yes, I'm so happy. We can always rely on each other, I said, my voice shaking as I accepted his proposal. I thought my mom would be happy for us, but she seemed hesitant. My mom, Linda, lost her husband when I was young and raised me by herself. My grandpa once suggested we live together, but she wanted just us two. I met my grandparents for the first time in elementary school because I got married against my parents' wishes. I was young and stubborn, so I didn't rely on them right away. My mom always says, I might have caused you to suffer because of that. But I never felt that way. She's always been positive, kind, and loving. She's the most important person in my life and who I want to be like. When John and I went to tell my mom about our engagement, she blessed us with all her heart. John said, "Thank you. I'm excited for our future." My mom was almost in tears, happy for us. I said, "We should also tell your parents." "Thank you. I didn't see my family much since boarding school and college, but they'll be happy. Make sure to introduce yourself properly to John's family. You're becoming part of their family," my mom said, fully supporting us. I heard John's family are all doctors. His dad owns a hospital, and his mom stays at home. He also has a younger brother who's 8 years younger. I hope we get along, but meeting them makes me nervous. "Don't worry, I'll find us a place to live," John said. "Thanks. I'm nervous, but I'm excited too." I believed a bright future was ahead of us until that day, the meetup, 2 months later. We waited in a fancy restaurant's private room as John's parents and brother arrived a bit late. "Nice to meet you. This is my mom. My dad runs a clinic. Mom's a full-time housewife. And this is my brother, a high school senior." John introduced them. We introduced our families. John's doctor parents looked impressive, but his brother seemed more casual with messy hair and a disheveled uniform, glued to his phone. Then John said, "I want to marry her." His dad gently corrected him, First, let's learn about her family. If we're becoming family, we should understand their background and character, his mom added, assessing us with serious eyes. Where's your father today? His dad asked. I've told John to say we're a single-parent household. Something's off. My dad passed away when I was young, so my mom raised me alone, I explained. His brother exaggeratedly twisted his face and said, seriously? Just one parent? Ridiculous. The one with the attitude crossing his legs was John's arrogant younger brother. What's that supposed to mean? My mom raised me alone, and I'm thankful for it, I said, raising my voice. Mind your manners and put away your phone, John scolded him, and his brother turned away angrily. You're a high school teacher, right? His mom asked me this time. Yes, I teach English at a public high school, I replied. As soon as I spoke, his family all chimed in at once. A teacher? None of us are teachers, and she's in humanities. Isn't she unsuitable for our son? We wanted him to marry a doctor's daughter. A public high school teacher seems plain and poor. I'm in a totally different world. I already have a recommendation for medical school, they said bluntly. John, shocked by their words, spoke up. She's an amazing woman. She's dedicated to her job. Don't talk about her like that. Then his dad glanced at my mom. We haven't agreed to their marriage yet. A single mother and a teacher. What about you, ma'am? Can we ask about your education and job? My mom replied firmly, I've done different jobs since my husband died. Right now, I work as a janitor at a hospital. I only finished middle school. Before my mom finished, his family started laughing. Oh, she only went to middle school and does part-time work. Must have been very poor. His father dismissed my mother. Seriously, even with just a high school diploma, you're in a tough spot. So now she's a cleaning lady. Lowest of the low, his younger brother sneered. Your mom only finished middle school and works part-time. I couldn't even imagine such a life. Marrying into a family of doctors, I couldn't comprehend their attitude. Was this marriage just for money? His mother's dramatic frown delivered the final blow. As I suspected, we can't approve this marriage, his father declared, as if it were final. How terrible. I was stunned, speechless. Insulting me was one thing, but mocking my mother who raised me alone was unforgivable. I couldn't be part of this family. Stopping my mother from standing, I stood up. I understand how you all feel, so let's pretend this meeting never happened. Is that acceptable? With a cold, emotionless face, I declared. After a moment of silence, his family exchanged glances and burst into laughter. I thought you had something important to say. We're the ones calling off the engagement. Did you realize we were going to reject you and decided to end it first out of pride? His parents said, smug. Wait, that's not it. John couldn't stand his parents' behavior. I'm sorry. I can't be part of this family. I'm really sorry for their rudeness. Seeing our serious conversation, his parents paused their laughter. Why are you apologizing? You should find a more suitable partner. Maybe another doctor or a wealthy woman, they said. I stopped John from saying more and asked, would it have been better if I were a rich heiress? Of course, even if you're not a doctor, being rich wouldn't be a problem. You could help our hospital, right, dear? That might even be better for us. His parents laughed, continuing their show. So, you're saying you'd pass up such an opportunity? I challenged. What do you mean? They looked confused. By marrying our son, you'd gain some wealth. Where would a janitor and a regular teacher get that kind of money? John sighed heavily, rubbing his temples. What's going on? You're acting strange, his dad said, oblivious. Did you even listen to their introductions? Does the name Yale not mean anything to you? John asked. What about it? Not worth remembering such a family, his dad replied. Yale, huh? His dad seemed to catch on. Right? My grandpa chairs Yale University, and she's his daughter. Yale Academy, that elite place with everything from kindergarten to university? It has a medical school and hospital, his dad's eyes widened. Yeah, that Yale. You've heard of it, right? I said, taking charge. No way. A Yale Academy daughter dropping out of middle school to become a janitor? That's impossible, his parents exclaimed. Exactly. Your lie will be found out right away. If you're feeling guilty, come up with a better lie, I advised them. My mom works as a janitor in hospitals and schools, right? I'm talking about the hospitals and grad schools at Yale. What? She's undercover as a janitor? That's fancy talk for spying, right? Her job is to check on the school while cleaning and report any problems. My grandpa asked her to do it. If you don't believe it, go check, John explained. What? What? My detailed explanation seemed to convince them. His parents started to panic. Why didn't you tell us this sooner? Yes, if we knew that, we would have. This is what happens when you don't listen to people, his parents admitted, feeling foolish. I was about to explain further when I was cut off. I was ready to answer any questions, but it was unfortunate. I couldn't forgive how they insulted my mom. I quietly responded, my mom dropped out of middle school due to poor health since childhood. She had a brother to carry on the family line, so my grandpa prioritized her health over education. After middle school, she moved to a country house for ongoing treatment and rest. There, she fell in love with my dad. She argued with my grandparents, who wanted her to marry into a suitable family and left home to marry. They didn't rely on her family at all. But when my dad died and she raised me alone, my grandparents suggested we come back. She didn't agree immediately. I was stubborn, she said. She felt guilty for leaving and then asking to return. Over time, they wanted to see their grandchild and their relationship improved. Changing her name back to Yale was for my sake. His brother was stunned. So I told him, it seems you've been recommended for medical school. Which university? What? John's brother was caught off guard by the sudden change in topic. Oh, so it's Vassar College's medical? Oh. His mother realized something as she said that. Vassar College is linked to Yale. If I mention today's events, your admission recommendation could be canceled, right? Hey, don't joke. Our son got in, and nothing can change that. We even pay extra to cover his grades. Canceling it now would be ridiculous. His dad slipped up, admitting to bribery. Both John and I said together, you went that far, Dad. No, it's not. His father was clearly flustered, his mom and brother turning pale beside him. Treating admissions so lightly, was it all about money? Did you bribe his teacher? I pressed. No, I already said. The president of Vassar College is my uncle. If I report this, he'll investigate thoroughly, I warned. What right do you have? You're so arrogant, his mom snapped, her face red with anger. I hold no authority here, but I was told I'd eventually work at Yale, I explained calmly. Say what now? His mother's tone softened. Oh, let's calm down. Let's forget what's happened. Your behavior will determine if I approve of this marriage. Is that fair? Yeah. Our son is also the clinic's heir. He needs our approval to marry. You want to marry John, right? His father was on board, and his brother added, just let them get married and don't cut me out. Faced with their selfishness, John exploded, I don't need your permission. I'm cutting ties with you all. What? His family was stunned. I always thought you were pretentious because we're doctors, but I never expected this at our first meeting with my partner. What are you saying? Fine, cut us off. Facing his speechless parents, he continued, unashamed of how you treated her and her mom, and bribing for my brother's admission. I despise you. I'm marrying her and being happy. Stay out of our lives. With that, his parents were flustered. So, you're not taking over the clinic. If our other son doesn't get into medical school, there's no hair. He brushed off his parents. I'm not taking over. I've been asked to work as a surgeon after Yale. I'm considering that over working at your clinic. What? I don't care. Let him take over. Wait, we have patients counting on you. That's right. We'll be in trouble if you don't take over. Ignoring the chaos, he turned to my mom. I'm sorry. I want to cut ties with my family and build a home with your daughter. Please let us marry. His voice trembled a bit. You don't need to apologize. I didn't fall for you because you're a doctor. I fell in love with your kindness and sincerity. My mom, standing beside him, nodded. That's right. You're kind and respectable. Being a surgeon is amazing. I support your dreams and happiness. Thank you. I'd appreciate it. He continued to bow, and my mom smiled. His family watched in shock. Mom, let's go home. There's no point in staying. Agreed. We'll leave. If you need anything, contact us. My mom left Yale's legal advisor's business card as she left. 1 year has passed since then, and John and I are happily married, living together. He's been working diligently as a skilled surgeon at the hospital after graduating from Yale. Despite his busy schedule and lack of sleep, I'm glad to see his enthusiasm for his work. My grandfather, who admires him, hopes he'll join our university's hospital in the future. As for his family, the truth about my brother-in-law's bribery came out, and the teacher who took the money was punished. His admission was revoked, and he's now trying to get into med school through regular channels. But it's tough given his attitude. His parents' clinic struggled because of the director's arrogance. Patients left when they realized John wouldn't take over, and most of the staff quit due to his mom's behavior. They faced social backlash and eventually closed the clinic. As for me, I've started studying educational administration at my grandfather's suggestion. He hopes I'll contribute to managing our institutions. With guidance from my uncle and seniors, I'm learning and growing. My mom said, "It's great to see our family grow closer." I'm truly happy to hear that. I want to give back more in the future. Though my days are busy, I'm grateful for the support from my mom and husband. We've been married for 3 years. My father-in-law, who was very kind to me, has passed away after being sick for a long time. He died peacefully with his family around him. I think we should invite Mom to come live with us, I said. Yeah, that's a good idea. Her legs and back have been giving her trouble. And since I work from home, I can help her a lot, my spouse agreed. So we decided to ask my mother-in-law to come live with us. My spouse told the family about our plan before the funeral. Why are you saying that? You just asked your mom for her savings of $2 million, didn't you? One family member said. Don't worry, we're going to take care of her and live with her, my spouse reassured. That's right, she wouldn't have to worry as much in her current home. Leave it to us, I added. Some of my sisters-in-law, seeming rushed and insistent, agreed to live with her. It's not about the money. You shouldn't think that way. Mom gets to decide, and I respect her choice. I replied to their accusations. When Liam asked, our mother-in-law bowed her head and said, "Thank you. Your child is still small, so I'll stay at my current house," she said, meaning she'd rely on her daughter. I've never heard about any savings, I remarked, surprised by the sudden accusations. The couple acted like we were the bad guys for suggesting we live together without worrying about money. Maybe she's the one who wants to live together, Liam wondered aloud as we drove home. In the car ride back, Mia thought about this. I agree. I get that feeling too. We should check in on your mom when we have time, I suggested. After that, I visited her when I could and tried my best to look after her, hoping it would make Liam feel better. But within a few months, their attitude towards my mother-in-law changed a lot. One day, when I stopped by during a break from work, my sister-in-law was there. She grabbed the cake I brought as a gift and checked it. After she seemed satisfied, she suddenly told me to come inside. "Oh, Amber, you're here to visit," my mother-in-law greeted. "I got a cake you like. Please have some later." "Thank you," I replied. I noticed she was wearing the same clothes as yesterday. "If doing laundry is hard for you, I can take it home, wash it and bring it back," I offered. "Maybe you're struggling with housework because you're not feeling well physically," I suggested. "I'm concerned because only their laundry is usually hung outside, and I'm worried she's losing weight. If she's eating 3 meals a day, this shouldn't be happening." "I'm fine, Emma, thank you," my mother-in-law insisted, trying to avoid worry. "But," I persisted, "you keep coming every day." Sarah, my sister-in-law, interrupted me and looked at her own mother as if she were something dirty. "Sarah, you promised we'd take care of Mom, didn't you?" I reminded her. "So what?" she snapped back. "Exactly. At that time, she refused our offer because she said we'd take care of her. But what's really going on with my mother-in-law's situation?" I wondered aloud. "Because Mama's savings were used to buy a new car, so now she's a poor old woman with no money. Get it? You wanted to call her in, but it costs money now, so you don't want her anymore," Sarah accused, her tone accusatory. "What the heck, saying things like that?" I exclaimed, feeling guilty for not taking my mother-in-law in earlier. She sat behind me, looking uncomfortable. "She's your real mother. It's shocking that you can talk about money like this, especially after she spent her hard-earned savings. Please be careful with your words when you say you don't meet her. Please think more about Mom," I urged. "You're so annoying," Sarah grumbled, seeming unwilling to have a reasonable conversation. Not wanting to make things more uncomfortable, I called Liam to explain, and we decided to bring her to our house starting today. I quickly packed her things, got her into the car, and drove her to our house. My sister-in-law didn't seem to realize how insensitive she was being, and my mother-in-law was surprised by how quickly I acted. After that, our family of 4, including my mother-in-law, began living together. Emma, I'm sorry for being a burden, especially when your child is still young. And you have to take care of me too. My mother-in-law apologized. Why are you apologizing? Don't worry about it, we're family, right? I reassured her with a smile. She had always treated me well, like her own child, even though I came from an orphanage. Living with her made me feel happy and refreshed. I'm happy living with you, and it's my first time raising a child. There are many things I don't know, so I want you to teach me, she said, with a half smile. My husband is also happy with how things are going, and most importantly, my mother-in-law seems to be enjoying living with her grandchild. But despite this happiness, our financial situation as a couple wasn't great. We were cutting back on expenses and just getting by each day. Still, I was learning about saving money, and I didn't want to rely too much on it for happiness. But I had a dream. I always wanted to open a cafe, so even when I was a student, I worked part-time at a popular cafe. However, bringing my mother-in-law into our home meant putting my dream on hold. I didn't want to give it up for my family, so I worked hard to save money, continued working from home, took care of my child, and managed daily household tasks. One day, about 6 months after my mother-in-law moved in, she called me in a serious tone. "Eva, please come here," she said. "Yes, what is it?" I asked as I approached. She handed me a thick envelope. "This is for your living expenses. Take it without saying anything." When I checked inside, I saw bundles of $100 bills. I was surprised. Wow, is this money? I've always been good at saving. I have a habit of keeping bundles of bills, she explained calmly. I couldn't believe it as I counted. There were several $1,000s. Indeed, when I counted, it was exactly $7,000, she confirmed with a smile. "I can't accept this much," I protested, trying to refuse, but she stopped me. "I'm sorry for testing you. I was planning to see how you managed finances for a year, but I don't need to worry anymore. By giving you more money for living expenses, I made you stick to strict saving habits. I didn't want to burden you anymore. Please accept it. I'll cover the living expenses. How about $2,000? She suggested. I stared at my mother-in-law, stunned. "Oh no, I don't need $2,000, but why so much money?" I was still a bit confused. She explained that she won the lottery and started studying popular investment strategies. It turned out to be profitable. She actually had $80,000 in savings in a bank account and invested in stocks through the bank. My sister-in-law, hoping to inherit money from her father, set up a fake $20,000 to test their financial responsibility. When she gave them $200,000 for their future expenses, they couldn't make it last even a week. Even my father-in-law, before he passed away, was aware of my sister-in-law and her husband's spending habits. He mentioned the possibility of cutting them off if they tried to take all his inheritance. My mother-in-law thought it might happen. "But you don't put money first," my mother-in-law continued. "I was surprised but really happy when you refused to take the money out. That's why I want you to accept it. And I also want to help you achieve your dream." My mother-in-law must have heard about my dream from my husband. But is it okay to accept her generosity? I wondered. After discussing it with my husband, we decided to save the money for the future. When I told my mother-in-law, she understood and agreed. A few days later, my sister-in-law and her husband showed up unexpectedly, demanding to move back in with my mother-in-law. Luckily, my husband was home that day, so he handled the situation, and they left without causing any trouble. But I couldn't shake my concern for them. When my mother-in-law saw them, she suggested that we set a specific day for their visits since they might come again soon. Eventually, they agreed, and they came on the agreed-upon day and time. As soon as they entered the house, my sister-in-law demanded, "Pack up quickly, we're going home right now," without even saying hello. But my mother-in-law calmly responded, "What I was waiting for was, we've been waiting for you. Please have a seat." "How dare you? Who are you?" My sister-in-law snapped. "I'm John, an attorney," a voice from the next room replied. It turned out that my mother-in-law had hired a lawyer. We were in the next room and could imagine my sister-in-law and her husband panicking as we heard the conversation. The lawyer explained their demands. We won't give away any current assets. They must repay the entire $2,000 they spent, and they have to leave the home they are occupying now. No way, ma'am. I'm your daughter. How can you cut ties like that when your own daughter is in trouble? My sister-in-law countered loudly. Please reconsider, my brother-in-law added, raising his voice, which was unusual for him. But my mother-in-law remained unfazed and spoke calmly. If that's the case, then you've forgotten what you did to me. Do you remember? I'm an elderly woman with no money. You said you didn't need money because I didn't. Despite having debts, you used the living expenses I gave you to buy a new car. And now I hear that your debts have more than doubled. You don't know how to handle money. Don't borrow from others. Moving in with me was just an excuse because you couldn't afford rent. It's your own fault. Regarding my husband's inheritance, I'll also ask you to give up your rights. I won't help you in the future. Remember that. Unable to respond, my sister-in-law and her husband left quietly, feeling hopeless after hearing from the lawyer. Despite their daughter's and husband's refusal to leave, they eventually moved out of the family home, and now no one knows where they are. When I asked my mother-in-law if she regretted her decision despite being blood relatives, she replied firmly, "As a mother, sometimes you have to let your child stand on their own." I didn't ask any more questions. As time went on, the savings we had from our monthly living expenses grew. You can use that money for yourselves, my mother-in-law told us. After discussing it with my husband, we decided to use it for a family trip we had been putting off and as capital to open the cafe we had always dreamed of. With my mother-in-law's support, we took a step toward our dream that we had been hesitant to pursue. Despite facing many challenges leading up to the opening, we managed to overcome them together. As the grand opening approached, my husband quit his job at the wholesale company to help me source materials for the cafe and speed up the preparations. We renovated the family home where my mother-in-law and father-in-law used to live, turning it into the cafe. It was important to my husband to preserve the atmosphere of the building as a place of cherished memories for my in-laws. Although it took time to prepare, the cafe quickly became a beloved spot in the community, offering people a place to relax. I was surprised when my sister-in-law and her husband visited the cafe once, but they seemed much more humble than before. It looked like they had truly changed. Looks like those two still have some learning to do, my husband remarked with a sigh. Tears of joy filled my mother-in-law's eyes as the family home transformed into a cafe, preserving the memories she had with my father-in-law. She became more active in her rehabilitation, addressing her previously ailing legs and hips. When she felt confident in her physical condition, she put on the same apron as us and stood behind the counter, looking vibrant and alive. It felt as if my father-in-law, watching from the border of a photo, was smiling down at her. I now live with my parents, so why don't you, a stranger, just move into a cheap place? What's the big deal, right? I thought my husband would make me happy, but turns out, he was just using me. His family betrayed me, and I was really shocked. It seemed like they hadn't even realized how naive they were. But if they kick me out, who's going to pay the bills? I realized there was no point in being part of this family, so I knew what I had to do next. I got in touch with everyone and started getting ready. What happened to all the stuff? I had a company come and take it all away. The next day, I called another company and got rid of all the furniture and appliances. My husband freaked out and started yelling. My name is Michelle Thompson. I'm 35 years old. I've been working from home since I finished college. I only have to travel once a month, but I work full-time. My company has been really understanding because both of my legs are disabled, so I use a wheelchair to get around. This happened because I had a motorcycle accident in college. A car crashed into me from behind on the highway, and I was thrown into the air. It felt like everything was moving really slowly. This is it for me, I remember thinking as I flew through the air. Luckily, I didn't die, but my legs got injured and I can't move them anymore. I've been doing rehab ever since, but they probably won't get better. I've been in a wheelchair for years now. I guess I'll probably stay single for the rest of my life. Once I accepted my condition, I started wanting to get married again. One day, my friends arranged a blind date for me, and that's when I met Ken, who's 5 years older than me. Despite his age, he looked younger. What surprised me was how immature he acted for a 40-year-old. He's very straightforward, which means he doesn't hold back. After seeing me in a wheelchair, he didn't hesitate to ask all sorts of questions like, how do you do everyday things like eating or chores? Can you manage work? Are you independent in the bathroom or for bathing? While others tiptoed around the topic, Ken asked me everything bluntly. Most people might find his approach rude, but I actually liked that he was genuinely interested in me. We went on a few more dates and eventually became a couple. I believed I could find happiness with him. At that time, I couldn't imagine being with anyone else who would want to be with me forever. So when Ken proposed just 6 months into our relationship, I was thrilled. But things took a turn after we got married. When Ken and I moved in together, we chose my rented house, which is a bit expensive but very wheelchair-friendly, probably because the previous tenant made it that way. Ken liked the spaciousness. Since I spent most of my time at home, I ended up doing most of the housework. Sometimes when I was tired, I'd ask him for help, but he'd just say he was too tired and wouldn't lift a finger, not even to help me bathe. Seriously, I'm not doing that, Ken said when I asked him for help. I technically can manage on my own, but it takes a lot longer. When I lived alone, I had a caregiver come twice a week to assist me in the bath. I was used to managing the other 5 days on my own, but I always wished Ken would help. It would be so much quicker. Every time I spent a long time getting into the bath, I stopped asking for the caregiver's help because Ken said it was a waste of money. As I was bathing, I started feeling tired in my arms. The bathroom was originally designed to be accessible, which was one of the reasons we chose the place. But when Ken took a bath first, he wouldn't tidy up afterward. He'd leave the bath bucket out and shampoo bottles on the floor, which made things even more difficult for me. Hey, could you please think about making it a little easier for me when I bathe alone? Just let me have a bath without overthinking it, I asked him. But no matter what I said, Ken wouldn't listen. This house is designed for you to live comfortably. I moved in for you and you still complain, Ken argued. You wanted to move to Ken. When did I ever say that? This house was originally my place. That's why it's set up for someone in a wheelchair. The first time I invited Ken over, he seemed impressed by the spaciousness and the appliances. I'd love to live here after we're married, he said, admiring everything. But now he complains, saying things like, this handrail is such a nuisance. It's like living in an old person's home. Why would you say that? Yeah, I should have looked more closely before, I admitted to myself. It finally dawned on me after we started living together. Ken married me because of the house, the appliances, and the fact that I could manage household chores despite my disability. Ken received praise from his colleagues and friends for being a wonderful husband, but that's far from the truth. He's just taking advantage of the fact that I can do everything by myself despite my disability. And on top of that, he's been jobless and partying every night since we started dating. Realizing all this after getting married is heartbreaking and makes me want to cry. But despite everything, I haven't broken up with him. I keep telling myself that there must be some love there since we got married, right? Hey, can you give me some allowance? Ken asked. You received some just the other day, didn't you? I replied. Yeah, but I've already spent it, Ken admitted. Slowly, Ken started to depend on me for money without putting in any effort to work for it. I decided to reach out to Ken's mother for advice. Ken doesn't seem interested in working. What should I do? He's always been hardworking. Maybe he just needs a break. Even though she told me I could talk to her about anything, she always sided with her son. She'd say, it's natural since he's an only child. But I wasn't convinced. Since I've lost both my parents, I have no other family to turn to. I felt completely lost. I thought about discussing it with a friend, but the last time I mentioned my problems, they told me, I wish I had problems like that. Ken always seems to appear fine on the surface. That evening, Ken confronted me. Did you go talking to Mom about my work? He accused. Yeah, why? Would it bother an older person like her? I can't believe you. I responded. Seriously? Well, maybe you should work so I don't have to worry, I retorted. Ken stormed out after that. It's typical of him. He always leaves when things don't go his way and then returns drunk early in the morning. I'm back, babe, he slurred. It's early, don't disturb the neighbors, I cautioned. Keep it down, I added. Shut up. Don't boss me around, he snapped back. When he's drunk, he's out of control. All I can do in situations like these is stay quiet and endure it. I think I'm reaching my breaking point. I began to entertain the idea, but the thought of facing loneliness again was heart-wrenching. I was torn between enduring the current situation or spending the rest of my life alone. The idea of divorce started to weigh heavily on my mind. Then, out of nowhere, Ken brought up the idea of living with his parents. What? You mean they'd move in here? I asked, surprised. No, they'll move in here, Ken replied as if it was already decided that they would move in, without even discussing it with me. While I understand the desire to be close to aging parents, both of Ken's parents are still healthy. I couldn't understand why they would want to leave their own home to come live with us. Do they really need to stay here? It's going to be crowded with 4 people, and I work from home, so it'll be inconvenient. I expressed my concerns. You're always thinking about yourself, huh? I never thought you were this selfish, Ken accused. I'm just saying, why do they need to move here when they have their own place? Our place is bigger, more modern, and has all the conveniences. Plus, it's accessible for elderly people, I reasoned. If Ken's parents moved in, I'd have to be on my toes during work hours. Ken is rarely home, but his parents would likely be around a lot since they're retired. Sharing the bathroom, kitchen. I already move slower than most people, and I could easily imagine the strain of such a living situation. Can I have some time to think? I asked. You better hurry up. We don't have much time, Ken replied curtly. Despite Ken's insistence that there wasn't much time, he wasted no time in bringing his parents over by the weekend. It seemed like they had already discussed this move extensively. I've been thinking, maybe you should consider moving to a facility, Ken suggested. What? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. A facility for me? I was taken aback. Yeah, it's a good idea, right? You have your own limitations, right? In a facility, they take care of everything, Ken explained. It seemed like he wasn't just considering his parents moving in, but also the idea of sending me away. I'd visit you from time to time, he added casually. That statement jolted me awake. If not now, then when? Ken, what do you think I am to you, huh? You're my husband, right? Would you really tell your beloved wife to go to a facility? I confronted him. Hold on. When did I say I love you, Michelle? Ken's response made my anger boil. It was becoming increasingly clear that Ken was using me. Hadn't I known it all along? Wasn't it my fault for letting things get to this point? I felt like I needed to draw a line. Then, to my disbelief, Ken uttered even more shocking words. In this house, I'm going to live with my parents. You, an outsider, can go live in some cheap facility, he declared. What'd you just say? I looked to his parents, hoping for some support, but they just had unsettling grins on their faces. Why are you laughing? I demanded. What's the big deal, huh? Ken's parents responded with indifference. It seemed like things had been escalating too quickly lately. I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe they had their eyes on my home even before we got married. I knew I had to act fast and get these people out. Please leave, I said firmly. What? Leave now, I reiterated when they hesitated. How could you talk to my parents like that? Ken snapped, his anger boiling over. It was like I was seeing the real Ken for the first time. He was yelling at me with such fury. If he cared so much for his parents, why didn't he work hard and build them a house? Why did he have to take mine? My head felt like it was on fire. It's okay, Ken. Michelle must have been shocked since we came unexpectedly. His mother intervened. We just came to check the place today, his father added. Yeah, we need to check before moving in. Looks like there are more appliances than last time. Seems comfy to live in. It became clear they were here to stake a claim on my home. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself as I filled my lungs with oxygen. Then, a sudden question popped into my mind. If I leave, how are they planning to survive? His parents are on a pension, and Ken's just a part-timer. I'm covering all the rent and living expenses. Who's going to pay the $2,800 a month? Do his parents think Ken's earning the living expenses? I voiced my concerns, but they were ignored as his parents cheerfully left. Ken followed them. I'm going to stay at my parents' tonight. Hold on, we need to talk, he said as he left. There's nothing to talk about. I, the man of the house, have decided. I won't change my mind, he declared before leaving me alone in shock. But I couldn't just stay like that. I immediately called a real estate agent I knew. Ken didn't return that night, probably celebrating with his parents. I quickly sorted out essential and non-essential belongings. When Ken returned the next day, he saw the organized stuff and laughed. Oh, started packing. Found a place to move to already? Ken asked, surprised by my swift action. Yes, I have, I replied, handing him a card. And here's the card of a divorce lawyer. Here you go, Ken. From now on, let's communicate through the lawyer. A divorce? Why? If you're kicking me out, there's no point in being married anymore, right? Ken tried to reason. Ken seemed taken aback by the mention of divorce. You can't live without me, right? He added, almost as a question. I don't understand what you mean. Who else would marry you? Ken responded, his arrogance showing. I can live on my own, but you said you wanted to get married. I reminded him. It was only then that I realized how arrogant and overconfident Ken was. He approached me thinking I was a lonely, disabled single woman. I'm independent, have money, and never struggle with my living. Plus, I stay home all the time, so I handle all the chores for him. I'm the ideal woman. Money keeps coming in even if he doesn't work. He thought I wouldn't leave because I couldn't find anyone else. That's why he was shocked when I casually brought up divorce. Why? You know, if you divorce me, you might be single for the rest of your life, Ken warned, revealing his insecurity. Well, if it means living a married life with you, I'd rather be single forever, I asserted. Whether I spend the rest of my life alone isn't for you to decide. I added, my usually submissive demeanor giving way to defiance. Ken seemed flustered, and I could tell he was panicking. I never thought he was such a weak man. I realized I had been putting up with him for far too long. Once I made the decision to divorce him, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had been too focused on getting married. Anyway, you don't have to move out right away. I didn't mean to rush you into a facility that soon, I said. Oh, it's fine. I'll do as you wish. Don't worry, you won't find a place that fast. Think it over, okay? Ken replied, trying to regain control of the situation. I've already secured a place, so it's all right, I informed Ken. What? Wait a minute, isn't this too soon? Ken responded, clearly taken aback. I observed Ken's shifting attitudes, from smugness to panic. Dealing with him was becoming increasingly irritating as I calmed down. The facility staff are informed and know about my situation, so everything's fine. I reassured him, determined to move forward with my decision. When did you even set all this up? Were you preparing all along? Ken asked, clearly surprised by my sudden revelation. Yes, even before I met you, actually. I had been considering my retirement and had my eye on a certain facility. It's more like a condo. After an injury during my hospital stay, I read various investment books. I had decided to invest in stocks and real estate. I had diversified investments between my salary and my parents' inheritance. The facility I had my eye on, I had already purchased and had been renting it out for income. I never mentioned this to Ken. It's my hidden asset, I explained. We don't need to get a divorce. I get it. You can stay here. Let's live with my parents, Ken suggested. Do you not get it? Why would I ever do that? I responded firmly, feeling empowered by my newfound independence and decision-making. He seems pretty dense. Even after bringing up divorce, he still seems to believe he's the only one for me, I thought to myself. Sorry, but my mind's made up. What's your problem? I confronted Ken. You're so selfish. If you come crying back later, it's not my problem, Ken retorted. I won't be, so don't worry, I replied confidently, determined to move forward without him. Ken fell silent, lost in thought. Hours passed as I continued packing up my things. Then, I overheard Ken making a phone call. It seemed like he was speaking to his parents. It struck me as pathetic that he needed to rely on them for such decisions. Eventually, Ken approached me. Fine, we'll get a divorce. Just leave quickly, he said begrudgingly. Perhaps he would miss having me around to take care of the household chores. But he likely saw living with his parents as a way to avoid them. With that, Ken left for his parents' home. I'm going to talk to my folks about what's next. Get ready to move out quickly, he informed me. Yes, I'll do that, I replied, ready to start a new chapter of my life without him. I finished moving all my stuff within a week. During that time, Ken never showed up. We met again a day after the move was completed. As I was settling into my new home, Ken called me outside and asked, Hey, what's going on? This place is almost empty. Where are the appliances? I had a service pick up those items for me, I replied calmly. What? I had called a service the next day and had them collect all the furniture and appliances, Ken exclaimed, clearly agitated. My husband's frustration grew and he began grumbling. Not only Ken, but also his parents were there. All the appliances here were bought by me. They are all from when I was single. The only thing that's yours is right there, he pointed out. There were only 3 cardboard boxes. I did leave the clear clothing container we bought after marriage, I added. Michelle, we can't live with this. We need to split the property if we're divorcing, Ken insisted. That's right, we can't live here like this, his mother chimed in. What are you talking about? Nobody can live here, Ken protested. What do you mean? The rent's $2,000, I clarified, confused by their sudden concern. You could see the shock on Ken and his parents' faces. I reminded Ken of something I had told him when we got married. This isn't your own house. No, it isn't. I got a bit of a discount on the rent because I asked a real estate agent, I explained. I know if I move out, the rent will go up even more, given that this is a property with disability access, and I've already received several inquiries from people with the same concerns. I recommended that they move out. Why didn't you tell us sooner? What are we going to do now? Ken asked, clearly flustered. I don't know. I did tell Ken. I didn't hear about it. I'll sue you, his mother threatened, her frustration boiling over. I saw that coming, honestly. From an outsider's perspective, it might look like I selfishly got a divorce, broke the lease, and took all the furniture and appliances. But I was sure. I reflected. You can sue, but do you even have the money for it? Ken's face contorted with frustration. It was clear he couldn't afford a lawyer, even if he wanted to. I revealed my ace up my sleeve by showing them some pictures. When did you take these? Ken exclaimed in shock as he saw the images of himself gambling and womanizing. I spent my money on this. I'm ready to use these in court, Ken, I warned. What the hell? I thought everything was going well. Ken's parents expressed their agitation. What's going on? Suddenly, Ken started to apologize. I'm sorry. Please come back. I need you, Michelle, he pleaded, his tone filled with desperation. You're the one who made me leave. We're not married anymore, so what's the point? And do you even care about me? If not, I'll just go. Even Ken's parents started saying sorry beside him. We don't have a home anymore. This was a shock. What do you mean? Our house got taken away because we couldn't pay for it. Ken's family will lose their home in a few weeks. They ran out of money. Ken's dad owed a lot, and it got bigger over time. Ken used to get money from his parents, but when he got married, he probably hoped for more support. Now I get why his mom was nice to me before we got married. I can't do anything for you now. We're not close anymore. Even if my parents and I have nowhere to go, does that not bother you? You caused this situation, right? Can you at least give me the electronics and furniture? You're wealthy, Michelle. Are you going to sell them? His real reason was obvious. I told him firmly that I wouldn't give him anything, not even one piece of furniture or electronics. Please reconsider. Show some kindness. It's too late to say sorry now. You need to figure this out on your own. That's exactly why I'm asking for help. I can't figure it out. I told Ken and his dad, who kept asking. If they couldn't pay the rent, they should leave. The place is in my name, so if I cancel the lease, they have to go. Evicting them was easy. Even if the lease was transferred, Ken probably couldn't afford to live here. I got all this information from the real estate agent. I can't afford the rent, so I decided to cancel the lease. I don't need this place anymore, and since our divorce is final, it's all over. I managed to get the shocked family out and locked the door. What do we do now? I can move to a different place. Goodbye. Places like that must be awful, right? Good luck in that terrible place. Ken probably felt he needed to get the last word in, so he spat out those bitter words. I ignored him and his parents and left. But Ken wasn't done. A few days later, he showed up at the facility where I had moved. What's going on here? Ken looked like he was going to pass out when he saw where I was living. This place isn't bad at all. It's actually a luxury facility worth $1 million. I had saved up money and invested it, and that's how I bought this place. The timing was perfect since the previous occupant had just left. With the money from selling my house and some extra income, I had plenty left over. This facility is great with doctors and helpers on hand. The rooms are like apartments with lots of privacy. It's a 3-bedroom, so families can stay together. There are even couples and families living here. I can call for help whenever I need it, and there's assistance with bathing every day. Originally, I thought this would be my last home, but I'm glad I moved here. You have that much money all along. Why? I don't want you to keep coming here. We're not close anymore. Please go. Then Ken started acting nice all of a sudden, but it felt weird. Can I stay here? What? No, that's not happening. We're not married anymore. Accept that. Then let's get married again. I'm staying in a motel. Isn't that sad? I can't find a job because I don't have a permanent address. At the motel, Ken is smooth with his words. It seems like he's forgotten about his own parents. In the end, he's only thinking about himself. Why don't you take a good look at yourself? It's sad to see you living off your parents at your age, being dependent after marriage, and now begging for help. Ken's face turned red. Aren't you embarrassed to be relying on your ex-wife? Look, everyone's watching, right? Residents peeking from their balconies were indeed watching. Actually, I had asked them beforehand to keep an eye out if my ex-husband showed up. I always expected him to come back for some reason. The residents were really helpful. They purposely looked at Ken with sympathy. It's like watching a real-life drama. I want to applaud them. Ken finally noticed the stares and seemed to realize how embarrassing his behavior was. I won't bother you anymore. With a pale face, he muttered those words and left. I doubt he'll come back here again. Later, when I went out, I bumped into my mother-in-law working at a supermarket checkout. My father-in-law worked as a janitor and my mother-in-law was a cashier. As soon as she saw me, she turned away and tried to hide. She was being scolded by a younger employee for her behavior. Ken was introduced to a job by someone he met at the motel cafe, but it turned out to be a poorly paid job where he was being taken advantage of. Meanwhile, I often host home parties and enjoy my life with others from the same facility. I've also made friends with other wheelchair users. If I had known such a supportive community existed, I would have moved here earlier. I make time for physical therapy sessions, and my current goal is to regain the ability to move my legs on my own. Overall, I lead a fulfilling life, both at work and in my personal time.